Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Rob Hartwell stood at his kitchen window, watching the evening sun cast long shadows across his manicured lawn. At 42, he had built what most would consider the American dream. A sprawling colonial house in Millbrook Heights, a successful construction company, and a family that appeared picture-perfect from the outside. His wife Lisa moved through their home with practiced grace, her auburn hair catching the light as she prepared dinner. Married for 15 years, she had been his anchor after he'd left his previous life behind. Danny, their 13-year-old son, hunched over his homework at the dining table, occasionally glancing up at his father with a mixture of admiration and mild fear that Rob had come to expect. Few people knew about Rob's past. Before Hartwell Construction, before suburban Connecticut, he had been Staff Sergeant Robert Hartwell of the 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught him patience, precision, and the value of reading people. More importantly, they had taught him that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford when survival was on the line. The transition to civilian life had been surprisingly smooth. Lisa, a nurse he'd met during his recovery from a shrapnel wound, had provided the stability he needed. Her gentle nature had been a balm to his war-torn psyche, and when Danny was born, Rob had believed he'd finally found peace. But something had shifted in recent months. Lisa's phone calls ended abruptly when he entered rooms. She volunteered for extra shifts at the hospital with increasing frequency. Small details that as trained eye couldn't ignore. New perfume, clothes he hadn't seen her buy, a lightness in her step that hadn't been there in years. Rob had learned long ago that intuition kept you alive. His was screaming, "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" Danny's voice broke through his thoughts. Rob settled beside his son, noting how the boy instinctively straightened when he approached. The respect was there, but so was distance. Rob had tried to be softer with Danny than his own father had been with him, but some habits died hard. The boy needed to understand that strength mattered in this world. "What's the problem?" Rob asked, scanning the worksheet. As they worked through the algebra, Rob's phone buzzed. A text from his foreman. "Storm damage on the Morrison site. Need your call." "I have to step out for a bit," Rob announced, grabbing his keys. "Work emergency." Lisa looked up from the stove, her expression unreadable. "How long will you be?" "Couple hours, maybe less." He kissed her cheek, noticing how she tensed slightly at his touch. Another small sign in the growing collection. The Morrison job site was a 40-minute drive, but Rob handled the crisis in 20 minutes. A fallen tree had damaged some framing, nothing that couldn't wait until morning. He'd used work emergencies as cover before, old habits from his military days, when gathering intelligence meant being where people didn't expect you. As he drove home through the darkening streets of Millbrook Heights, Rob's mind worked through possibilities. If Lisa was having an affair, he needed proof. If it was something else, something worse, he needed to know that too. The one thing he wouldn't tolerate was betrayal. He'd made that clear to everyone in his life, including Lisa. The neighborhood was quiet as he pulled into his driveway. Most houses glowed with the warm light of family dinners and evening routines. The picture of suburban tranquility. But Rob had learned that surfaces often lied. He'd kill the headlights and sat for a moment, studying his house. Lisa's car was in the garage. Danny's light was on upstairs. Everything appeared normal. But as he walked toward the front door, he noticed his neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, watching from her window. She quickly ducked behind her curtains. Mrs. Vance was a widow in her 70s, the unofficial neighborhood watchdog. She knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Her vigilance had always amused Rob, but tonight, her behavior seemed different. Nervous. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Lisa was loading the dishwasher, moving with the efficient motions of someone eager to finish a task. "Everything okay at the site?" she asked without looking up. "Fine. Just storm damage." Rob studied her profile. "You seem distracted. Just tired. Long shift." She closed the dishwasher with more force than necessary. "I'm going to bed early. I'll be up in a bit." Want to check on Danny first. Rob climbed the stairs, his footsteps silent on the carpeted steps, another habit from his past life. Danny's door was cracked open, soft music playing from his phone. The boy was already asleep, his face peaceful in the dim light. For a moment, Rob allowed himself to imagine that his suspicions were wrong, that his family was exactly what it appeared to be. But as he turned to head to his bedroom, he heard Lisa's voice drifting up from downstairs. She was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was intimate, familiar. The voice of a woman talking to a lover. Rob stood frozen at the top of the stairs, his jaw clenched. 15 years of marriage, and she was throwing it away for what? A moment of excitement? A midlife crisis? The conversation ended, and he heard Lisa moving around downstairs. By the time she came to bed, Rob was pretending to read, his face carefully neutral. "Good book?" she asked, settling under the covers. "Military history. Pretty dry stuff." He set the book aside and turned off the lamp. "Good night, Lisa." "Good night." In the darkness, Rob stared at the ceiling and began a plan. If Lisa wanted to play games, she'd pick the wrong opponent. He'd spent years learning how to hunt the most dangerous prey on Earth. A cheating suburban wife would be child's play. But first, he needed to know exactly what he was dealing with. Tomorrow, he'd start gathering intelligence. And then, depending on what he found, he'd decide just how merciless his response would be. Chapter 2. The Discovery. The next morning unfolded with the deceptive normalcy that Rob was beginning to recognize as performance art. Lisa bustled around the kitchen, making coffee and packing Danny's lunch with the practiced efficiency of a devoted mother. But Rob noticed the tremor in her hands, the way she avoided his eyes. "I might be late tonight," she said, not looking up from Danny's sandwich. "Dr. Morrison wants me to cover the evening shift." Again, Rob kept his tone light, but made sure she heard the question underneath. "It's good money, and with Danny starting high school next year." She trailed off, finally meeting his eyes. "We could use the extra income." It was a reasonable explanation. It was also a lie. Rob had built a successful business. Money wasn't an issue, and Lisa knew it. But he simply nodded and kissed her cheek before heading to work. At the job site, Rob's mind wasn't on construction schedules or supply deliveries. He was thinking like a soldier again, analyzing patterns and weaknesses. Lisa's affair, because he was now certain that's what this was, had made her sloppy. People in love, even illicit love, always were. During lunch break, he made a call to an old Army buddy who now ran a private security firm in Hartford. Tony Riggs owed Rob his life from an incident in Kandahar that neither man talked about anymore. "I need a favor," Rob said without preamble when Tony answered. "What kind of favor?" "The quiet kind. Background check on someone." "Real quiet." Tony was silent for a moment. "Personal?" "Yeah. Text me the details. I'll have something by tomorrow." Rob sent over what he knew. Lisa's full name, birth date, social security number, workplace. If she was involved with someone, Tony would find out who. The afternoon dragged by, but Rob forced himself to maintain his routine. He reviewed blueprints, spoke with subcontractors, handled the dozen small crises that arose on any construction site. But his mind kept circling back to Lisa, to the careful way she'd been arranging her deceptions. At 5:30, he drove home through the familiar streets of Millbrook Heights. The neighborhood was coming alive with the evening rituals of suburban life. Children playing in yards, fathers washing cars, mothers calling families to dinner. The American dream on full display. Mrs. Vance was in her garden when he pulled into his driveway, her attention seemingly focused on her roses. But Rob caught her watching him in his peripheral vision. He made a mental note to speak with her soon. In his experience, nosy neighbors often knew more than they realized. Inside, Danny was sprawled on the living room floor, textbooks scattered around him. The sight of his son studying triggered something protective in Rob's chest. Whatever Lisa was doing, Danny would be caught in the crossfire. The boy didn't deserve that. "Where's your mom?" Rob asked, settling into his recliner. "Hospital. Said she'd be late again." Danny didn't look up from his history book. "Mrs. Patterson is making dinner for us." Mrs. Patterson was their neighbor from 2 houses down, a kind woman who often helped out when Lisa worked late shifts, or claimed to. Rob spent the evening helping Danny with homework and reviewing work emails, but part of his attention remained focused on the clock. At 8:30, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Busy night. Won't be home until after midnight. Don't wait up. He stared at the message, noting its brevity, the lack of any personal touch. This wasn't the woman who used to send him rambling texts about her day, who'd add heart emojis and inside jokes. This was someone checking in with an obligation. After putting Danny to bed, Rob sat in his darkened living room, nursing a beer and thinking. The house felt different without Lisa, more honest somehow. The careful performance was over, and he could finally drop his own act. His phone rang at 9:15. "Tony, that was fast," Rob said. "This one was easy. Your wife's been busy, brother." Rob felt his grip tighten on the phone. "Tell me." "She's been seeing someone for about 4 months. Guy named Trevor Mills, 36, works as a physical therapist at the same hospital. Divorced, no kids, clean record. But here's where it gets interesting." "I'm listening." "This isn't his first rodeo with married women. Guy's got a pattern. Targets wives with money, usually older. There was a situation in Boston 2 years ago, a woman named Jennifer Caldwell, married to a successful lawyer. She died in a car accident 6 months after she started seeing Mills." Rob's blood went cold. "Accident. That's what the report says. Single car crash, lost control on a rainy night. But the timing was convenient. The husband had just increased her life insurance policy. Mills disappeared from Boston right after the funeral. And I think your wife might be in over her head with the wrong guy. Or maybe she knows exactly what she's doing. Either way, you need to be careful." After Tony hung up, Rob sat in the silence of his house, processing what he'd learned. Lisa wasn't just having an affair. She was involved with someone who might be planning something far worse than adultery. He thought about Danny, asleep upstairs, innocent and trusting. About the life insurance policies Lisa had suggested they update last month. About her sudden interest in their financial accounts. Her questions about his business assets. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that made Rob's military instincts scream warnings. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. At 11:40, he heard a car in the driveway. Rob quickly moved to the window, watching as a dark sedan dropped Lisa off at the end of their driveway. She walked quickly to the house, her heels clicking on the pavement, her movements those of someone trying not to be noticed. Rob was back in his chair, apparently asleep, when she crept inside. He listened to her move through the house, her footsteps careful and measured. She paused outside Danny's room, then continued to their bedroom. When she slipped into bed beside him, Rob could smell unfamiliar cologne on her clothes. The scent of another man, another life she was living in the shadows. "Rob," she whispered, "are you awake?" He didn't answer, keeping his breathing steady and deep. After a few minutes, Lisa relaxed beside him, apparently satisfied that he was asleep. But Rob lay awake for hours, his mind working through scenarios and possibilities. If Trevor Mills was as dangerous as Tony suggested, then Lisa might be as much a victim as a perpetrator. Or she might be a willing accomplice in whatever they were planning. Either way, Rob knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't wait around to find out which. Tomorrow, he'd begin his own operation. And unlike his targets, he had experience dealing with people who want him dead. By morning, Rob had made his decision. If they wanted to play the long game, he'd show them what a real predator looked like when it was cornered. Chapter 3. The Hunter Emerges. Rob woke before dawn, his internal clock still tuned to military precision. Lisa lay beside him, her face peaceful in sleep, looking like the woman he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. But Rob had learned not to trust appearances. People were never who they seemed to be, especially when they had something to hide. He slipped out of bed and dressed quietly, his movements automatic and silent. Downstairs, he started the coffee maker and settled at his laptop. Time to do some hunting of his own. Trevor Mills had left a digital footprint, as most people did in the modern world. Social media profiles painted him as a charming, fitness-obsessed professional who specialized in sports therapy. His Instagram was full of selfies at the gym, Pictures of expensive dinners and motivational quotes about living life to the fullest. Classic narcissist behavior, in Rob's opinion. More interesting were the gaps in Mill's online presence. 6 months in Boston with no posts, followed by a sudden move to Connecticut. A pattern of targeting women in their late 30s and early 40s, always married, always financially comfortable. The man was a professional, Rob realized. A predator with a system. Lisa appeared in the kitchen at 7, already dressed for work in scrubs that seemed somehow more flattering than they used to be. She moved with purpose, avoiding his eyes as she poured coffee. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Storm kept me awake." There had been no storm, but Lisa didn't contradict him. Either she'd been too distracted to notice the weather, or she was too lost in her own lies to track his. "I might be late again tonight," she said, reaching for her purse. Dr. Morrison scheduled another evening procedure. Rob looked up from his laptop, studying her face. She met his eyes this time, her expression carefully neutral. She was getting better at lying, he noted. Practice made perfect. "That's the 3rd time this week," he said. "Maybe you should ask for a raise." "Maybe I will." She kissed his cheek, the gesture perfunctory. "Tell Danny I said goodbye." After she left, Rob sat in the quiet kitchen, thinking. Lisa's deception was becoming more elaborate, which meant whatever she and Mills were planning was accelerating. He needed to move faster. At 8:30, after Danny caught the school bus, Rob made another call to Tony. "I need more on Trevor Mills," he said. "Everything you can find. Financial records, employment history, known associates. And I need it today. This is getting serious, isn't it?" "Yeah, it is." Rob spent the morning at the job site, but his mind was elsewhere. He found himself studying the crew, noting which men had the skill set for surveillance work. Old habits from his Army days, when every mission required backup plans and contingencies. Around noon, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Riverside Park. Bench by the duck pond. 1 hour. Come alone." Rob stared at the message, his instincts immediately on high alert. This wasn't from Tony. His contact would have called. Someone else knew about his investigation. He drove to Riverside Park, his senses heightened. The place was mostly empty on a Tuesday afternoon, just a few joggers and an elderly man feeding ducks. Rob spotted Mrs. Vance sitting on the specified bench, looking nervous and out of place. "Mrs. Vance," he said, approaching slowly. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I know this is strange, Robert," she said, not meeting his eyes. "But I had to talk to you." "About Lisa." Rob settled beside her on the bench, maintaining the casual posture of a neighborly conversation while his mind raced. "What about Lisa?" "I've been watching. I know that sounds terrible, but I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I notice things." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Lisa's been lying to you." "Go on." "She hasn't been working late at the hospital. Not every night, anyway. I've seen her car come home, then leave again after you're in bed. And yesterday morning, when you left for work early, a man came to your house. He was there for 2 hours." Rob felt his jaw clench. "Can you describe it?" "Tall, dark hair, expensive clothes. Handsome, I suppose. He had a key, Robert. He let himself in like he belonged there." The confirmation of what Rob already suspected still hit him like a physical blow. But it was the detail about the key that made his blood run cold. Giving Mills access to their home meant this had moved beyond a simple affair. It was an invasion. "Why are you telling me this?" Rob asked. Mrs. Vance finally looked at him, her eyes frightened. "Because I'm scared for you. And for Danny. Last night, when you and Lisa came home from your neighbor's emergency, I was watching from my window. I saw that man in your backyard. He ran when the police cars arrived." Rob's mind went blank for a moment. There had been no neighbor's emergency last night. No police cars. Mrs. Vance was confused, mixing up events, or then it hit him. She was talking about something that hadn't happened yet, something that was planned for the future. "Mrs. Vance," he said carefully, "what emergency are you talking about?" Her face went pale. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I heard Lisa on the phone yesterday. She was talking about tonight, about how you and Danny would be coming home, and..." She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What did you hear exactly?" She said, "When Robert and Danny get home tonight, we'll be ready." The neighbor will pull them aside, and then we can finish this. I thought she was planning a surprise party or something, but then she said something about making it look like an accident. Rob's training kicked in, overriding the shock and rage that threatened to consume him. Lisa and Mills weren't just planning to betray him. They were planning to kill him. Tonight, Mrs. Vance, I need you to listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice calm and controlled. You need to go visit your sister in Albany. Today, right now, pack a bag and leave town for a few days. But Robert, this isn't a suggestion. These people are dangerous, and you've already seen too much. If you stay, you could get hurt. Mrs. Vance nodded, tears in her eyes. What about you and Danny? Rob stood, his mind already working through the tactical situation. Don't worry about us. But Mrs. Vance? If anyone asks, you never spoke to me today. As he drove back home, Rob's phone rang. Tony, I've got more on your boy Mills, Tony said. And brother, you're not going to like it. Tell me, Jennifer Caldwell in Boston? Her death wasn't the first. There was another woman in Phoenix and one in Miami before that. All married, all wealthy, all dead within 6 months of getting involved with Mills. The man's a serial killer, Rob. He targets married women, seduces them, gets them to change their wills or insurance policies, then kills them and their families. Rob felt something cold and predatory awaken in his chest. Any arrests? Never enough evidence. Guy's careful, and he has help. There's a woman who works with him, different name each time, but the same MO. She gets close to the targets, gains their trust, helps set up the kills. A woman. Rob thought about Lisa's behavior over the past few months, her sudden interest in their finances, her questions about his business insurance. How long had she been planning this? How long had she been someone else entirely? Tony, Rob said, I need you to make some calls. People who might be interested in dealing with a problem like this. Quietly, Rob, whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking my wife and her boyfriend are planning to murder me and my son tonight. And I'm thinking that's a mistake they're going to regret. Rob ended the call and drove toward his house, his mind clear and focused for the first time in months. The game had changed. Lisa and Mills thought they were hunting a suburban contractor, an easy mark who'd build a comfortable life and gone soft. They had no idea they'd targeted a man who'd spent years learning how to kill without remorse, how to plan operations that left no evidence, how to eliminate threats with surgical precision. Tonight, they'd learn the difference between predator and prey. And Rob would teach them the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate a soldier who's protecting his family. The war was about to begin. Chapter 4, The Soldier's Mind. Rob arrived home to find the house exactly as he'd left it, on the surface. But now he moved through the familiar spaces with a different perspective, seeing them through the eyes of someone planning an attack. He noted sight lines, entry points, potential weapons, escape routes. The comfortable suburban home transformed into a battlefield in his mind. In his study, he opened a safe hidden behind a bookshelf. Inside were items from his previous life, tactical gear, communication equipment, and a Glock 19 he'd kept despite Lisa's objections. His hands moved with muscle memory as he checked the weapon, loaded it, and secured it in a concealed holster. From another compartment, he retrieved a military-grade tactical knife and a small surveillance device, technology that had saved his life more than once in Afghanistan. Old habits died hard, and Rob had never quite trusted the peace of civilian life enough to completely disarm himself. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, working late again. Kissed Danny goodnight for me. Rob stared at the message, feeling the last vestiges of the man who'd loved her die quietly in his chest. She was already positioning herself away from the scene, establishing her alibi while her partner prepared for murder. Danny came home from school at 3:15, dumping his backpack by the door with teenage carelessness. For a moment, Rob watched his son and felt something that might have been grief. After tonight, their lives would never be the same. Dad, you okay? Danny was looking at him with concern. You look weird. Just thinking about work stuff, Rob said. How was school? Boring. Can I go to Tyler's house? His mom said I could stay for dinner. Perfect. Rob needed Danny away from the house, but sending him away too obviously might alert Lisa to a change in routine. Tyler's mom called me. No, but call her. If she's okay with it, you can go. But I want you to spend the night there too. School project or something. Danny's face brightened. Really? Sweet. Tyler's got the new Call of Duty game. Just call his mom first. While Danny made the call, Rob's mind worked through the evening's probabilities. If Mrs. Vance had overheard correctly, the plan involved him and Danny returning home to some kind of staged emergency. A neighbor would intercept them, providing an alibi witness, while Lisa and Mills were inside waiting. The setup suggested they planned to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong, or possibly a murder-suicide. Rob had seen enough crime scenes to know how these things were typically staged. Danny bounded back into the room. Mrs. Chun says it's fine. She's making spaghetti. Good. Pack an overnight bag. I'll drive you over. As Danny ran upstairs, Rob's phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Yeah. Mr. Hartwell? This is Detective Morrison from the State Police. I understand you might have some information about a case we're working on. Rob went cold. No one should know about his investigation except Tony. Who told you that? A concerned citizen called in a tip. Says they have reason to believe your wife might be in danger. Something about a man named Trevor Mills. The call was a setup. Either Mills had somehow learned about Rob's investigation and was trying to smoke him out, or Lisa was creating a paper trail that would support whatever story they planned to tell after tonight. I think you have the wrong number, Rob said. I don't know anyone named Trevor Mills. Sir, if your wife is involved with this man, she could be in serious danger. Mills is wanted for questioning in connection with several suspicious deaths. We need to bring her in for her own protection. Like I said, wrong number. Rob hung up and immediately called Tony. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Someone just called claiming to be state police, warning me about Mills. Used your exact words from this morning. Tony swore. Someone's got ears on this conversation. My secure line might be compromised. Or yours isn't the only investigation into Mills. Rob thought quickly. Either way, they know I know. That changes tonight's timeline. Rob, you need to get out of there. Take your boy and disappear for a while. No. Rob's voice was flat, final. I'm done running from problems. These people want to play games with my family? I'll show them what a real game looks like. After hanging up, Rob drove Danny to the Chun house, his mind calculating odds and variables. The fake police call meant his enemies were either very smart or very desperate. Possibly both. Dad, Danny said as they pulled into the Chin's driveway. Everything's okay, right? You've been acting strange lately. Rob looked at his son, really looked at him. Danny had his mother's eyes, but Rob's stubborn jaw. A good kid who deserved better than to grow up with a mother who'd try to have him killed. Everything's going to be fine, Rob said. I just need you to promise me something. If anything weird happens, if anyone you don't know comes looking for you, or if Mrs. Chun gets scared about anything, you call me immediately. And if you can't reach me, you call Uncle Tony. He handed Danny a business card with Tony's number. You're scaring me, Dad. Good. Smart people get scared sometimes. It keeps them alive. Back home, Rob began his preparations in earnest. He swept the house for surveillance devices and found two, a listening device in the bedroom and a small camera in the kitchen. Both were professional grade, which meant Mills had more resources than Tony's initial investigation had revealed. Rob left the devices in place, but disabled them in ways that would look like technical malfunctions. Let them think their surveillance had simply failed rather than been discovered. In his garage, he gathered materials from his construction supplies. Wire, timers, small explosive charges used for controlled demolitions. In the right hands, construction materials could become very dangerous things. As the sun set, Rob positioned himself in his darkened living room with a clear view of the street. The tactical vest felt familiar under his shirt, like putting on an old uniform. His weapons were within easy reach, and his mind had settled into the calm, predatory focus that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. At 8:30, Mrs. Vance's house went dark. She'd followed his advice and left town, which was one less variable to worry about. At 9:15, a dark sedan cruised slowly past his house, the same car that had dropped Lisa off the night before. Rob's phone buzzed. Heading home now. Danny asleep? He typed back, at Tyler's for the night. See you soon. The trap was set. Now, he just had to wait for the predators to walk into it. But Rob had learned something important during his years as a soldier. The best defense was always a vicious, overwhelming offense. Tonight, Lisa and Mills would discover that they'd made a fatal error in judgment. They'd tried to hunt a man who'd spent years perfecting the art of war. And in war, mercy was a luxury that got you killed. Chapter 5, The Web Tightens. At 9:45, Rob's motion sensors picked up movement in his backyard. He'd installed the system years ago as a security measure, but tonight it served a different purpose. Through his night vision scope, he watched a figure moving carefully along the tree line behind his house. Trevor Mills was exactly what Rob had expected. Tall, athletic, moving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. He carried a small duffel bag and wore dark clothing that would blend into shadows. Professional equipment for a professional killer. Rob's phone buzzed with another text from Lisa, 5 minutes out. Make sure the garage door is open. Interesting. She wanted him to meet her in the garage, away from windows where neighbors might see. That suggested the plan required witnesses to believe Rob had been home when the attack occurred. Rob moved through his house with silent precision, checking his preparations one final time. The explosive charges were in place, wired to remote detonators he could trigger from his phone. Not enough to level the house, but sufficient to create chaos and eliminate evidence. In the kitchen, he left a half-finished beer on the counter and turned on the television, signs of normal evening activity. Then he slipped out through his basement exit, a door hidden behind landscaping that Lisa had never known existed. The backyard was dark, but Rob moved through it like he owned it. Because he did. Every tree, every shadow, every sight line had been mapped in his mind. This was his terrain, and Mills was operating blind. Rob positioned himself behind the garden shed with a clear view of both the house and the woods where Mills was hiding. His phone showed Lisa's car turning onto their street. Through his scope, Rob watched Mills check his watch and begin moving toward the house. The man's timing was precise, coordinated with Lisa's arrival. They'd planned this carefully, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed their target would be passive. Lisa's car pulled into the driveway. Rob watched her sit behind the wheel for a moment, her phone glowing as she typed a message, probably confirming to Mills that she was in position. Then she stepped out of the car, and Rob felt a cold shock run through him. Lisa was wearing scrubs, but underneath he could see a bulletproof vest. She was armed and armored, prepared for a fight. This wasn't a seduction gone wrong or a crime of passion. This was a military-style operation. His wife had become someone he'd never known existed. Lisa moved toward the house, her movements careful and controlled. She had training, Rob realized. Probably not military, but enough to be dangerous. The question was, had she always been this person, or had Mills transformed her into something else? Through his phone, Rob triggered the listening device in the bedroom, turning it back on. If they were going to coordinate their attack, he wanted to hear their plan. Mills reached the back door as Lisa entered through the garage. Rob listened through his earpiece as they moved through his house like they owned it. He's not here, Mills said, his voice carrying the flat accent of the American Midwest. His car's in the driveway, Lisa replied. He has to be here. Well, find him. We're on a schedule. Rob smiled grimly. They were looking for a victim who was supposed to be watching television and drinking beer. Instead, they'd walked into the web of someone who'd spent years hunting the most dangerous prey on Earth. Maybe he's in the shower, Lisa suggested. Check upstairs. I'll take the basement. They were splitting up, which was tactically sound but played into Rob's hands. Divide and conquer worked both ways. Rob triggered the first phase of his plan. The lights in the house went out as he cut power to the main electrical panel. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie shadows through the windows. What the hell? Mills' voice crackled through the earpiece. Power must have gone out, Lisa said, but Rob could hear the uncertainty in her voice. There's a backup generator in the garage. Forget the generator. We do this in the dark. Rob moved closer to the house, using the shadows to mask his approach. Through the kitchen window, he could see Mills moving through the downstairs rooms, a flashlight in one hand and a pistol in the other. The man was skilled, checking corners and maintaining tactical awareness. But he was also in Rob's house, where every creak and shadow was familiar territory. Rob triggered the second phase. The motion-activated sprinkler system came online, flooding the backyard with water and creating a muddy, slippery terrain that would slow any escape attempt. It also covered the sound of his movement as he approached the back door. Inside, he could hear Lisa calling softly, "Robert, are you okay? The power's out." The performance was almost convincing. If Rob hadn't known better, he might have believed his worried wife was searching for him in the dark. But he'd heard her real voice talking to Mills, seen her bulletproof vest, watched her move like someone who knew how to kill. His phone vibrated with a motion alert from his front yard cameras. A van had pulled up across the street, and two more figures were moving toward his house. This wasn't just Lisa and Mills. They had a team. Rob's mind shifted into combat mode. 4 attackers, professional equipment, coordinated timing. They'd planned this as a precision operation, probably intending to stage it as a home invasion that went tragically wrong. But they'd made their first mistake by bringing a knife to a gunfight. And their second mistake was thinking they were hunting a suburban contractor instead of a soldier who'd made killing his profession. Through his earpiece, Rob heard Mills moving toward the basement stairs. Time to even the odds. He entered his house through the back door, moving with the silent precision that had kept him alive in hostile territory. The familiar layout guided him through the darkness as he positioned himself at the top of the basement stairs. Below, Mills' flashlight beam swept across the basement workshop where Rob kept his tools. The man was being thorough, checking every hiding place. Professional behavior. Rob waited until Mills was at the far end of the basement, then triggered the third phase of his plan. The basement door slammed shut and locked automatically, trapping Mills below. At the same time, Rob released a small canister of tear gas down the stairs. Mills' shouts of alarm echoed through the house as the gas took effect. Rob smiled grimly. 1 down, 3 to go. Trevor. Lisa's voice was sharp with panic. Trevor, what's happening? Rob's phone showed the other 2 attackers reaching his front door. Time to introduce himself properly. In the darkness of his own home, Robert Hartwell stopped being a suburban contractor and became Staff Sergeant Hartwell again. And Staff Sergeant Hartwell had never lost a battle. Chapter 6. The Hunt Begins. Rob moved through his darkened house like a ghost, every footstep calculated and silent. Lisa was on the 2nd floor, her flashlight beam visible through the stair railing as she searched the bedrooms. The 2 newcomers were at his front door, their lockpicking tools working methodically through his security system. From the basement came the sound of Mills coughing and cursing as the tear gas did its work. The man was trapped, but not eliminated, a problem Rob would address shortly. But first, he needed to deal with the immediate threat. Through his front window cameras, Rob studied the 2 new arrivals. Both men, both armed, both moving with the professional coordination of people who'd done this before. One was older, maybe 50, with the thick build of an ex-cop or military. The other was younger, lean and quick, probably the team's specialist for breaking and entering. Rob's phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number. He answered it, knowing exactly who it would be. Mr. Hartwell. The older man's voice came through clearly. My name is Detective Morrison. We spoke earlier today. Still not a real detective, Rob said softly. You're right. But I am the man who's going to kill you and your family tonight unless you cooperate. Rob watched through his camera as the fake detective gestured to his partner, who produced a small explosive device. They were preparing to breach his front door. What do you want? Rob asked, playing for time while he positioned himself. I want you to come outside, hands visible, and walk slowly to the van across the street. Do that, and your son lives. My son isn't here. Tyler Chen's house. 47, Maple Street. My associates are already in position. Rob felt ice form in his veins. They had Danny's location, which meant they'd been watching for longer than he'd realized. This wasn't just about killing him and Lisa. They were eliminating potential witnesses. I need proof my son is safe, Rob said. You'll get proof when you surrender. You have 60 seconds. The line went dead. Rob immediately called Tony while moving toward his weapons cache. They've got Danny's location, he said when Tony answered. I'm 10 minutes out from the Chen house. Tony replied. My team's already moving. Make it 5 minutes. Rob, what about you? I'm about to have a very loud conversation with some people who think they're running this operation. Rob ended the call and triggered the fourth phase of his plan. Every window in his house suddenly blazed with light as hidden floodlights activated, turning his home into a beacon visible for blocks. The sudden illumination would alert every neighbor within a quarter mile that something was wrong. Then he triggered the fifth phase. The small explosive charges he'd placed throughout the house began detonating in sequence. Not enough to cause structural damage, but sufficient to create the sound of a massive firefight. Smoke grenades activated simultaneously, filling the first floor with thick, choking clouds. To anyone outside, it would sound like a war zone. The fake detective and his partner immediately aborted their breach attempt, falling back toward their van as sirens began wailing in the distance. Rob's noise had triggered every security alarm within 6 blocks, and Millbrook Heights' private security company was already responding. But Rob wasn't finished. Through his basement intercom, he spoke to Mills. Trevor? Can you hear me down there? Mills' coughing reply was barely intelligible. Good. I want you to listen very carefully. My name is Staff Sergeant Robert Hartwell, 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 tours in Afghanistan, specializing in counterinsurgency operations. That means I've spent the last 15 years learning how to hunt people like you. Rob moved toward the basement door, gas mask in place, his weapon ready. You made a mistake tonight, Trevor. You brought a few thugs and some basic surveillance equipment to hunt a man who's forgotten more about killing than you'll ever learn. He opened the basement door and descended into the smoke-filled darkness, his night vision goggles turning the basement into a green-tinted battlefield. Mills was on the floor near the far wall, his weapon dropped, his hands clawing at his eyes. The tear gas will clear in about 10 minutes, Rob said conversationally, zip-tying Mills' hands behind his back. But you won't be conscious for it. Mills tried to speak, but Rob's tactical baton to the base of his skull ended the conversation. The man dropped unconscious but breathing. 1 down, 3 to go. Rob's phone buzzed. A text from Tony. Package secured. Your boy is safe. Relief flooded through Rob, followed immediately by cold, calculated rage. They'd threatened Danny. They'd brought his son into this war, and that was an unforgivable escalation. Upstairs, Lisa was calling his name, her voice sharp with panic. The sounds of explosions and the sudden arrival of sirens had clearly not been part of their plan. Robert, what's happening? Are you hurt? Even now, she was maintaining her performance. The concerned wife, terrified for her husband's safety. If Rob hadn't known better, he might have believed her. He climbed the stairs, leaving Mills unconscious in the basement. The first floor was filled with smoke, but Rob moved through it easily, his equipment making him nearly invisible. Lisa, he called back. I'm here. Are you okay? I'm in our bedroom. Something's wrong with the house. I think there's been an explosion. Rob made his way upstairs, noting that Lisa's voice was coming from their walk-in closet. Smart positioning, good cover, multiple exit routes, and close to the bathroom window that offered an escape route to the roof. She was learning, or perhaps she'd always known more than she'd let on. I'm coming, Rob said, approaching the bedroom door. Just stay where you are. Through the doorway, he could see the glow of Lisa's flashlight in the closet. She was positioned behind their dresser, using it as cover. Her pistol was visible in her right hand. Rob smiled grimly. The mask was finally coming off. Lisa, he said softly, we need to talk. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. Rob stood in the doorway of his bedroom, studying the woman who had shared his bed for 15 years. Lisa crouched behind their dresser, her pistol trained on the doorway, her face a mask of concentration that he'd never seen before. This wasn't the gentle nurse he'd married. This was someone else entirely. Come out slowly, Robert, she said, her voice steady and cold. Hands where I can see them. You know, Lisa, in all our years together, you never mentioned you knew how to handle a gun. There are a lot of things you don't know about me. Rob stepped into the room, his hands visible but ready. Through his night vision, he could see that Lisa was wearing more than just the bulletproof vest. She had tactical gear hidden under her scrubs, including what looked like a communication device. Like the fact that you've been planning to kill me for months. Lisa's grip on the pistol tightened. Where's Trevor? Taking a nap in the basement. Don't worry, he's still breathing. For now. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, Robert. Actually, I think I do. Trevor Mills, serial killer with a specialty in married women. 3 confirmed victims, probably more. You helped him target me, just like you helped him with the others. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Lisa's eyes. How do you know about Jennifer Caldwell? About Phoenix and Miami? Because I spent 15 years learning how to gather intelligence. Lisa, it's what I do. Sirens were getting closer, and Rob could hear vehicles arriving outside. But the sounds weren't from police. They were from Millbrook Heights Security, whose response protocols Rob had helped design when he'd moved to the neighborhood. Those aren't cops, Rob said conversationally. It's private security. They'll contain the area and wait for real police, which gives us about 20 minutes to finish our conversation. Robert, listen to me. You don't understand the situation. I understand that you've been lying to me for months. I understand that you gave your boyfriend a key to our house. I understand that you were planning to kill me and Danny tonight and make it look like a home invasion. Lisa's face went pale. Danny? We never. Your friends had his location. They threatened him to make me surrender. That wasn't part of the plan. Lisa's composure cracked, revealing something that might have been genuine distress. Trevor promised me Danny would be safe. And you believed him? A man who's killed at least 4 people, including children? There were no children in Boston or... Jennifer Caldwell had an 8-year-old daughter, Lisa. She died in the same car crash. Did Trevor forget to mention that detail? The color drained from Lisa's face completely. For a moment, the weapon in her hands wavered. That's impossible. He told me she was alone. He said we would never hurt children. He lied. Just like he lied when he told you this would be quick and clean. Just like he lied when he said he loved you. Rob could see the moment when Lisa's entire worldview began to collapse. The woman who'd spent months planning his murder was realizing she'd been as much a victim as a perpetrator. Lisa, Rob said softly, how long have you known him? 8 months, she whispered. He came to the hospital after a climbing accident. I was his physical therapist. Before that, did you ever think about killing anyone? Did you ever imagine yourself planning a murder? No, never. I'm a nurse. I save people. Then what happened? What changed? Lisa's hands were shaking now, the gun no longer steady. He said you were planning to leave me, that you'd hired a lawyer, that you were going to take Danny and disappear. He showed me documents, emails, all fake. He said if we didn't act first, I'd lose everything. Danny would grow up hating me. I'd be alone and broke, and he offered you a solution. At first, it was just surveillance. He wanted to know your schedule, your routines. Then he started talking about how easy it would be to stage an accident, how we could be together and Danny would inherit everything. Rob stepped closer, his voice gentle despite the situation. Lisa, look at me. Really look at me. In 15 years of marriage, have I ever given you reason to think I'd abandon my family? The weapon dropped to her side as tears began streaming down her face. No, God, no. You're the most loyal person I've ever known. That's why I fell in love with you. Then why did you believe him? Because I wanted to. Because being with him made me feel alive again, and I didn't want to lose that feeling. Rob felt something twist in his chest. Not forgiveness. That was beyond his capacity now, but understanding. Lisa hadn't been evil. She'd been weak, manipulated by someone who understood how to exploit weakness. But weakness that threatened his family was still unforgivable. Where are the others? Rob asked. The 2 men who were at our front door? I don't know. Trevor handles the operational details. I was just supposed to get you into the garage and then what? You pull the trigger yourself. Lisa's face crumpled. I don't know. I don't think I could have. Even after everything, I don't think I could have actually. But you were willing to let Trevor do it. Yes. The simple honesty of her answer cut deeper than any elaborate justification would have. Lisa had been prepared to watch him die, even if she couldn't pull the trigger herself. Danny's safe, Rob said. My people got to him before yours did. Your people. I told you, Lisa. You never really knew who you married. Rob's phone buzzed with a message from Tony. Perimeter secured. Two suspects in custody. Local PD en route. Time was running out. In a few minutes, this would become a police matter with lawyers and procedures and legal complications that would tie up the truth for months. Rob had a choice to make. He could let the system handle Lisa and Mills, trust that justice would eventually prevail, or he could finish this the way he'd been trained to finish things in Afghanistan. He looked at the woman who'd shared his bed, who'd mothered his son, who'd been prepared to watch him die for the promise of a new life with a serial killer. Lisa, he said, I need you to understand something. After tonight, we're done. Not just our marriage, everything. You'll never see Danny again. You'll never contact him, never try to explain yourself to him, never interfere in his life. Robert, please. I'm not finished. You have two choices. You can cooperate fully with the police, testify against Mills and his associates, and accept whatever prison sentence they give you. Or you can disappear tonight and never come back to Connecticut. What do you mean, disappear? Rob's smile was cold and empty. I mean, you have about 10 minutes before the police arrive to decide whether you want to face justice or face me. Because if you choose to fight this, if you try to claim you were coerced or manipulated or not responsible for your actions, I will use every skill I learned in 15 years of military service to hunt you down and finish what you started tonight. Lisa stared at him, seeing for the first time the man she'd actually married. The soldier who'd spent years perfecting the art of war, who'd learned that mercy was a luxury that got people killed. You're scaring me, she whispered. Good. You should be scared. You try to kill my family, Lisa. In my world, that has consequences. Outside, Rob could hear vehicles arriving, real police this time, not private security. Time to make a choice. So what's it going to be? He asked. Prison, or running for the rest of your life? Lisa looked at the gun in her hands, then at the man who'd once promised to love her forever. Her choice would determine how this story ended, and whether she lived to see tomorrow. Chapter 8. The Price of Betrayal. Lisa stared at the weapon in her hands, then slowly placed it on the dresser. The gesture was surrender, but Rob remained ready. 15 years of marriage had taught him that Lisa could be unpredictable when cornered. I choose prison, she said quietly. I choose to testify against Trevor. Smart choice. Will you tell Danny the truth about what I did? Rob considered the question. Danny was 13, old enough to understand betrayal, but young enough to be destroyed by it. Learning that his mother had tried to murder his father would wound the boy in ways that might never heal. I'll tell him you made mistakes and had to go away. The details can wait until he's older. Relief flickered in Lisa's eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This isn't mercy, Lisa. This is tactics. Danny needs stability right now, not trauma. But when he's 18, when he can handle the truth, he'll learn exactly what kind of person his mother really is. The sound from outside were getting closer. Rob could hear tactical teams setting up a perimeter, the professional efficiency of law enforcement taking control of a crime scene. His phone buzzed with a call from Tony. Rob, you need to know, Mills had backup we didn't account for. There's a sniper team positioned 2 blocks south of your house. Rob's blood went cold. How many? 2 that we can see. Professional setup, military-grade equipment. They've been watching this whole time. Watching for what? Unknown. But they're not moving to engage. It's like they're waiting for something. Rob's mind raced through possibilities. If Mills had backup, why weren't they moving to extract him? Why position snipers to watch rather than act? Unless, Lisa, Rob said slowly, was Trevor working alone? What do you mean? I mean, did he have partners? People who hired him or coordinated with him? Lisa's face went pale. He mentioned someone once, called him the client, said this job was different because the client had specific requirements. What kind of requirements? I don't know. Trevor didn't tell me everything, but he said the client wanted to make sure there were no loose ends. Rob felt ice form in his veins. No loose ends meant eliminating witnesses. All witnesses. Lisa, I need you to think very carefully. Did Trevor ever mention anything about after? About what would happen to you once this was finished? He said we'd disappear together. Start over somewhere tropical. And you believed him? Why wouldn't I? We were partners in this. Rob closed his eyes briefly. Lisa truly had no idea how disposable she was to people like Mills. She'd been a useful tool, nothing more. Lisa, Trevor was going to kill you too. Tonight, after you'd served your purpose. That's impossible. He loved me. He loved what you could do for him. Once you'd help him kill me, you became a liability. Someone who could identify him, testify against him. You think a man who's killed at least 4 families would hesitate to eliminate one more witness? The truth hit Lisa like a physical blow. She staggered, reaching for the wall to steady herself. The bulletproof vest? Rob continued. Did Trevor tell you to wear it? He said it was for protection, in case you fought back, or in case he needed to shoot you and make it look like you died in the struggle with me. Outside, Rob could hear police setting up their command post. Bullhorns would be next, then negotiations. Standard procedure for a domestic disturbance with shots fired. But the sniper team changed everything. This wasn't over. Rob's phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Hartwell, a cultured voice said, "My name is Arthur Blackwood. I believe you have something that belongs to me." And what would that be? Information. Evidence. Witnesses. Mr. Mills was careless in his record keeping, and I need to ensure that certain documents don't find their way into the wrong hands. Rob put the call on speaker so Lisa could hear. Let her understand exactly how expendable she'd been. What kind of documents? Financial records, client lists, details about previous operations. The sort of information that could prove embarrassing to certain individuals. And if I refuse to cooperate, then my associates will ensure that you, your son, and anyone else who might have access to such information suffer unfortunate accidents, starting with the police officers currently surrounding your house. Through his window, Rob could see the tactical teams positioning themselves. Good men and women doing their jobs, unaware that they were in a sniper's crosshairs. What do you want? Rob asked. Simple. You and Mrs. Hartwell will come out together. You'll tell the police that this was all a misunderstanding, a domestic dispute that got out of hand. Mr. Mills will unfortunately resist arrest and be killed in the process. Very tragic, but these things happen. And then you'll retrieve whatever evidence Mr. Mills may have hidden in your house and turn it over to my people. In exchange, your family lives, and this entire incident disappears from official records. Lisa was staring at the phone, finally understanding that she'd been a pawn in a much larger game. You have 30 seconds to decide, Blackwood continued. After that, I begin eliminating police officers until you comply. Rob looked at Lisa, seeing his own realization reflected in her eyes. They weren't just dealing with a serial killer anymore. Mills had been working for someone with serious resources, someone who could make entire incidents disappear from official records. Someone who had snipers positioned to kill cops if necessary. 20 seconds, Mr. Hartwell. Rob made his decision. Lisa, when I tell you to move, you're going to run to the bathroom and lock the door. Don't come out until I call your name. Robert, what are you? 10 seconds. Rob triggered the final phase of his plan. Every remaining explosive charge in the house detonated simultaneously, not in sequence this time, but all at once. The controlled demolition charges he'd placed in the foundation support beams turned his home into a collapsing death trap. But they also created the perfect cover for what came next. As his house began to fall apart around them, Rob grabbed Lisa and threw them both toward the bathroom, the most structurally sound room in the house. Behind them, the bedroom ceiling caved in, crushing the space where they'd been standing. In the chaos of the collapse, with dust and debris filling the air, Rob activated his final contingency, the one he'd hoped never to use. His phone auto-dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. When it connected, he spoke a code phrase he'd hoped never to say. Broken Arrow. This is Staff Sergeant Hartwell. I need immediate extraction and full tactical support. Confirmed, Sergeant. Birds are inbound. ETA 4 minutes. Lisa stared at him through the dust and debris. What did you just do? I called in the cavalry, Rob said grimly. And now Mr. Blackwood is about to learn the difference between threatening a suburban contractor and threatening a United States soldier. Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters began to cut through the night air. Rob's war was about to become everyone's problem. Chapter 9. the final stand. The helicopters arrived like mechanical thunder, their rotors beating the air above the ruins of Rob's house. Through the settling dust and debris, floodlights cut through the darkness as fast rope teams descended into his backyard with military precision. Rob recognized the uniforms and equipment immediately. Special Operations Command, probably drawn from his old unit. The cavalry had arrived, and they were ready for war. "Lisa," Rob said, helping her to her feet in the bathroom that had become their shelter, "whatever happens next, stay behind me and do exactly what I tell you." She nodded, too shocked to speak. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her nurse's scrubs were torn and dusty, but she was alive. Rob's phone buzzed with an encrypted call. "Hartwell, this is Colonel Morrison. What's your status?" "Two civilians in protective custody, one hostile in the basement. Unknown number of additional hostiles with sniper support. Primary threat is Arthur Blackwood, civilian contractor with military resources." "Copy that. We've got thermal imaging on 2 sniper positions, both neutralized. Hostiles in black SUVs attempting to flee the area, being intercepted now." Through the bathroom window, Rob could see muzzle flashes in the distance as special ops teams engaged the fleeing vehicles. This had escalated from a domestic situation to a full military operation in minutes. "Sergeant," the colonel continued, "we need you to extract with any evidence related to this Blackwood individual. Command wants a full debrief on his operation." "Roger that. Be advised, one of the civilians is a cooperative witness with information about the hostile network." Rob looked at Lisa, who was staring at him with something approaching awe. The mild-mannered contractor she'd married had just summoned a military strike force with a phone call. "Robert," she whispered, "who are you really? Someone you should have asked that question about 15 years ago." A special ops soldier appeared at the bathroom window, his night vision goggles and tactical gear, making him look like something from a science fiction movie. "Sergeant Hartwell, I'm Master Sergeant Rodriguez. We're here to extract you. 2 civilians, plus whatever intel Mills was carrying." "Copy that. We've already secured the basement hostile. He's unconscious but stable." Rodriguez helped them through the window and out of the collapsed house. In the backyard, Rob saw a scene from his military past. Tactical teams securing the perimeter, communications specialists coordinating with air support, and medical personnel setting up a field station. "Danny," the thought hit Rob like a physical blow. "Rodriguez, I need immediate status on my son. He was at 47 Maple Street under protective custody. Already secured. Sergeant, your boy is safe and asking for you." Relief flooded through Rob, followed immediately by cold determination. Blackwood had threatened Danny. That was an unforgivable escalation that would have permanent consequences. "Where is Arthur Blackwood now?" Rob asked. "Unknown, but we recovered communications equipment from the sniper teams. NSA is backtracking his network as we speak." A Black Hawk helicopter touched down in Rob's backyard, its rotors churning up debris from his destroyed house. Lisa stared at the military hardware surrounding them, finally understanding that her husband's construction business had been only one part of his life. "Lisa," Rob said as medics checked her for injuries, "you're going to be debriefed by people who make Mills look like an amateur. Tell them everything you know about Blackwood's operation. Every detail, no matter how small. What about us? What about our family?" Rob looked at the woman who'd tried to have him killed, who'd been willing to watch him die for the promise of a new life with a serial killer. The woman who'd put their son in danger through her selfishness and stupidity. "There is no us, Lisa. There is no family. After tonight, you're a witness in a federal investigation, nothing more. But Danny will be told that his mother made some bad choices and had to go away. When he's older, when he can handle the truth, he'll learn what kind of person you really are. Until then, he's my responsibility." Master Sergeant Rodriguez approached with a tablet, displaying tactical information. "Sergeant, we've got Blackwood's location. Compound in the Berkshire Mountains, about 2 hours north. Command wants to know if you're available for consultation on the takedown." Rob looked at his destroyed house, at his son's bedroom window that was now just twisted metal and broken glass, at the woman who'd shared his bed and planned his murder. Lisa, he said, you have two choices. You can cooperate fully with the federal investigation, testify against Mills and anyone else in Blackwood's network, and accept witness protection when it's over. Or you can try to fight this, claim you were coerced, and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. What do you mean? I mean, Arthur Blackwood isn't the only one with resources. The difference is mine come with official government backing. If you cooperate, you get a new identity and a fresh start somewhere far from here. If you don't, Rob didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. Lisa had seen enough tonight to understand exactly what kind of man she'd betrayed. I'll cooperate, she said quietly. I'll tell them everything. Good. Rodriguez, get her to the debrief team. Full protection protocols. As Lisa was led away by federal agents, she turned back once. Robert? I'm sorry. For all of it. Rob watched her disappear into the back of an armored vehicle, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry wouldn't bring back the 15 years she'd stolen from him with her lies. Sorry wouldn't erase the fact that she'd been prepared to watch him die. Sergeant, Rodriguez was waiting for his answer about the Blackwood operation. Rob thought about Danny, safe now but traumatized by the night's events. About the life they'd have to build together, father and son, after the wreckage of everything they'd thought was real. About Arthur Blackwood, who'd threatened his family and was still out there, planning his next move. Tell command I'm available, Rob said. And tell them I want to be the one who puts Blackwood down. Copy that. What about your son? He goes to my brother's house in Colorado until this is finished. Full protection detail. And after it's finished? Rob looked at the ruins of his suburban dream, at the life he'd built and lost in a single night, at the future that stretched ahead of them, uncertain but finally honest. After it's finished, Danny and I start over. Somewhere new, with no lies between us. The Blackhawk's engines spooled up, ready to take him back to the war he'd thought he'd left behind. But this time, it wasn't about politics or territory or ideology. This time was personal. Rob Hartwell had spent 15 years pretending to be someone else, playing the role of suburban contractor and family man. But tonight had stripped away all pretense, revealing the soldier underneath. And soldiers, Rob knew, never left battles unfinished. As the helicopter lifted off into the dark Connecticut sky, carrying him toward his final confrontation with Arthur Blackwood, Rob felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the cold, pure satisfaction of purpose. He was going back to war, and this time he was going to finish it. 3 months later, Danny Hartwell sat in his new bedroom in Colorado, reading a letter from his father. The handwriting was familiar, but the man who'd written it was someone Danny was still learning to know. Son, the letter read, I know this has been hard. I know you have questions about your mother, about me, about why everything changed so suddenly. When you're ready, I'll answer all of them. But for now, I need you to understand one thing. Everything I did to protect you. Everything I will do for the same reason. You're my family now, my only family, and that means everything to me. Dad, Danny folded the letter and looked out his window at the Colorado mountains, thinking about the father he'd thought he knew and the father he was learning to understand. A man who'd built them a quiet life in Connecticut, then destroyed it in a single night to keep them safe. A man who'd loved them enough to become a monster when monsters came calling. And despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the loss of the mother he'd thought he knew, Danny found himself proud to be Robert Hartwell's son. Outside his window, federal agents maintained their watch, protecting them both until the last of Arthur Blackwood's network was eliminated. Danny didn't know how long that would take, but he was learning patience from his father, learning that some things were worth waiting for, learning that love, real love, looked like protection rather than promises, and learning that sometimes the best way to build a family was to destroy everything that threatened it. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. Thank you for making time for us in your day. Quick question for our audience. Where in the world are you watching from right now? We're always curious. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Wade Harmon had built his life on precision and calculation. At 42, he had transformed from a hardscrabble kid from rural Montana to one of the most respected structural engineers in Phoenix. His company, Cornerstone Engineering, had designed half the new skyline, and his reputation for delivering impossible projects on impossible deadlines had made him a wealthy man. On this particular Thursday evening, Wade sat in his home office, reviewing the final plans for the Meridian Tower project. The glass walls of his workspace offered a panoramic view of the Camelback Mountains, bathed in the amber glow of sunset. 15 years ago, he couldn't have dreamed of owning this modernist masterpiece nestled in Paradise Valley. Back then, he'd been sleeping on a pull-out couch in a studio apartment, working 18-hour days to build his business. That was when he'd met Tessa Galloway. She'd been waiting tables at Rosario's, the Italian restaurant where he took his only break of the day. Tessa, with her auburn hair and quick laugh, had been a fine arts major with dreams of opening her own gallery. She'd slipped him her number on a napkin along with his usual black coffee. 6 months later, they were married at the courthouse, with only his brother Cody as witness. Wade smiled at the memory, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. Lately, things had been different. The easy conversations had dried up. Tessa's art studio in their guest house sat unused for months. Their schedules rarely aligned, with her girls' nights becoming more frequent and his project deadlines more demanding. The buzz of his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was a text from Reed Blackwell, his oldest friend and head of security for Cornerstone. "You were right. Third time this week. Same location." Attached was a photo of Tessa's white Range Rover parked outside the Westward Ho Hotel. Wade's jaw tightened. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up the banking app. The joint account showed another unexplained withdrawal of $5,000 from yesterday. That made $15,000 in the past month. Wade had grown up with nothing. His father had walked out when he was 8, leaving his mother to raise him and Cody on a teacher's salary. He'd learned to notice patterns, to pay attention to details others missed. The inconsistencies in Tessa's behavior had started small. New clothes she never wore around him, unexplained absences, password changes on her phone. Now he had bank withdrawals and surveillance photos. The rational part of his brain had already accepted what was happening. The emotional part needed proof he couldn't deny. Wade picked up his personal phone and opened the fake Instagram account he'd created last week under the name Phoenix Enthusiast. Tessa had announced another girls' night for tomorrow at Penelope's, a new rooftop bar downtown. According to her sister Naomi, these gatherings often turned into impromptu live streams for their circle of friends. He set a notification for Tessa's account and returned to his work. Whatever was happening, Wade Harmon would face it with the same methodical precision he applied to everything else in his life. He wouldn't react without complete information. And when he did react, it would be decisive. As midnight approached, Wade heard Tessa's key in the front door. He closed his laptop and listened to her movements, the clatter of heels being kicked off, the rustle of her purse being set down, the refrigerator opening and closing. She didn't call out to see if he was still awake. Wade turned off his office light and stood in darkness, watching as she moved through their home like a stranger, checking her phone with a small smile he hadn't seen directed at him in months. "Long night?" he asked, stepping into the hallway. Tessa startled, nearly dropping her phone. "Jesus, Wade, you scared me. Sorry, just finishing up some work." He noticed how she subtly turned her phone screen away from him. "Yeah, Naomi was having a rough time. Her divorce, you know." Tessa's explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. Wade nodded. "Is she doing any better?" "A bit. Listen, I'm exhausted. Go in a shower and crash. I'll be up soon," Wade said, though they both knew it was a formality. They hadn't shared physical intimacy in nearly 6 months. As Tessa disappeared into their bedroom, Wade returned to his office and opened his laptop again. He pulled up the GPS history on Tessa's phone. A feature she'd forgotten was enabled when they'd set up their family account years ago. The map showed no trace of Naomi's address in Scottsdale. Instead, It revealed 3 hours spent at the Westward Ho Hotel. Wade closed the laptop again and stared out at the distant city lights. Tomorrow he would have his proof, and then he would begin to plan. Chapter 2. The Revelation. Friday evening arrived with the brutal heat typical of a Phoenix summer. Wade had spent the day in meetings, his mind only half present as he reviewed structural calculations and approved material changes. At 5 o'clock, he informed his assistant he would be working remotely for the remainder of the evening and drove home. Tessa was already gone when he arrived, her perfume lingering in their bedroom where she'd gotten ready. Wade changed into casual clothes, opened a bottle of 15-year-old Macallan, and poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. He wasn't typically a drinker, but tonight seemed to warrant the exception. At 8:30 p.m., his phone buzzed. Phoenix _core enthusiast had received a notification. Tessa Harmon Designs is now live. Wade took a slow sip of scotch and tapped the notification. Tessa's face filled the screen, flushed with alcohol and laughter. The camera panned to show a group of women seated around a private table on Penelope's rooftop patio, the city lights glittering behind them. Wade recognized most of them, friends from Tessa's art circle, a couple of wives of his business associates. Ladies, we've got nearly 30 people watching. Tessa giggled, reading comments that scrolled too quickly for Wade to catch. Yes, Stephanie, the view is amazing. Phoenix's finest architects, right here. The camera turned again, revealing a section of the table Wade hadn't seen initially. There, seated among the women, was his brother Cody, his arm draped casually over the shoulder of a man Wade recognized as Michael Rafferty, a real estate developer who had consulted on several cornerstone projects. Wade's grip tightened on his glass as he watched the interaction unfold. Cody and Rafferty seemed completely at ease in what was supposedly a girls' night. The camera eventually swung back to Tessa, who was now taking questions from viewers. Tessa, when are you opening your gallery? Someone asked. She laughed. When I finally get my settlement. Maybe next year. Wade's pulse quickened. Settlement? They weren't divorcing. At least, he hadn't been informed of any proceedings. Speaking of which, called a voice off camera that Wade recognized as Vivian, one of Tessa's oldest friends. You never answered my question from last week. Do you love Wade? Like, actually love him? The camera steadied on Tessa's face as she took a long sip of her cocktail. There was a moment when her expression shifted, the practiced smile slipping to reveal something colder, more calculating. Wade, she said with a small laugh. He's a paycheck, not a soulmate. We haven't connected in years. Wade sat perfectly still, his face expressionless as he continued watching. So what's the plan? Vivian pressed. Tessa glanced off camera, and the view shifted to include Mike Rafferty, who raised his glass with a smirk. Mike and I have plans after the divorce, Tessa continued, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret with her closest friends rather than a live audience. We're thinking Sedona. A small gallery for me, new development opportunities for him. The women laughed appreciatively, and the camera swung around again, capturing Cody in the background. Wade's brother, his only blood relative, caught the eye of someone in the group and deliberately raised his glass in a silent toast. Wade closed the app without watching further. He set his phone down carefully on his desk and finished his scotch in a single swallow. The burning in his throat was the only sensation he permitted himself to feel. For 15 minutes, he sat motionless, processing what he had witnessed. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the casual cruelty, the mockery, the obvious long-term planning behind his back. And his brother's involvement cut deepest of all. His phone buzzed again with a cascade of messages from Tessa. Wade, are you watching my live? Wade, someone said you might be on here. Please tell me you didn't see that. It's not what it sounded like. Wade, answer me. The messages continued, increasing in urgency, but Wade didn't respond. Instead, he opened his laptop and began a series of methodical steps. First, he transferred half of their joint accounts to a new account in his name only. Not everything, that would alert her too quickly. Just enough to secure his immediate future. Second, he called his company's general counsel, Marilyn Schaefer, despite the late hour. I need to protect the business, he said simply when she answered. I have reason to believe I'll be facing divorce proceedings soon. I'm sorry to hear that, Wade, Marilyn replied, her voice professional. I'll prepare the necessary documentation to isolate Cornerstone from any personal legal issues. Should I contact Preston about this? She was referring to Preston Galloway, Tess's father and a silent investor in Cornerstone's early days. Not yet. I need to assess the situation first. After ending the call, Wade opened a new document and began typing, creating a timeline of events, noting every inconsistency and unexplained absence from the past year. He worked with the same precision he applied to structural calculations, mapping out the architecture of his marriage's collapse. By midnight, Tess's messages had reached 53 in number. The final ones had become frantic, indicating she was outside his home office door. Wade could hear her calling his name, the doorknob rattling, but he had locked it earlier, something he never usually did. Wade, please. It was just stupid drunk talk. Please open the door. He continued typing, his expression unchanged. I'll call the police if you don't answer me. I'll tell them you're suicidal. At this, Wade finally stood. He walked to the door, unlocked it, and opened it to find Tessa tear-streaked and panicked. I saw everything, he said quietly. You might, Cody. Everything. Tessa's face crumpled. It's not. We were just... Save it. Wade's voice remained calm, almost gentle. You should pack what you need for tonight and stay with Naomi. Or Mike. Your choice. This is my house, too. Tessa protested, switching tactics. You can't just kick me out. I'm not kicking you out permanently. I'm asking you to leave tonight so we both have space to think. Tomorrow, we can discuss how to proceed. Something in his measured tone must have frightened her more than anger would have, because Tessa backed away. This isn't over, she warned. Wade nodded. No, it's just beginning. He closed the door again and returned to his desk, listening as Tessa moved through the house, gathering her things. When he heard her car start and the garage door close, he opened a new browser tab and began researching divorce attorneys in Phoenix, specifically those with reputations for handling high-asset cases with ruthless efficiency. The betrayal he had witnessed tonight was not just about infidelity. It was about identity. For 15 years, he had been Wade Harmon, Tessa's husband, Cody's brother, the dependable provider. Now he would need to become someone else, someone capable of calculating not just loads and stresses in buildings, but in human relationships. Someone who could dismantle the false structures around him and rebuild on truth, no matter how painful. Chapter 3, Tactical Retreat. The weekend passed in a blur of legal consultations and strategic planning. Wade met with 3 different divorce attorneys before selecting Dominic Vega, a former prosecutor known for his meticulousness and discretion. By Sunday evening, he had secured his financial assets, documented the evidence of Tessa's infidelity, and begun preparations for what he knew would be a protracted battle. Throughout this time, Tessa had continued her barrage of messages, alternating between tearful apologies, angry accusations, and manipulative appeals to their history together. She had returned to the house twice, once with Naomi in tow as emotional support, and once alone, pounding on the door at 2 a.m., clearly intoxicated. Wade had not engaged. Monday morning found him in his downtown office earlier than usual, reviewing the Meridian Tower blueprints with forced concentration. His assistant, Loretta, brought in coffee and hovered uncertainly by his desk. Is everything all right, Mr. Harmon? She asked. You've been in since 5 a.m. Wade looked up. Loretta had been with him for 12 years. She had helped plan his anniversary surprises for Tessa, had sent flowers when his mother died. She deserved more than evasion. Tessa and I are separating, he said simply. It's going to get complicated. I may need to adjust some meetings in the coming weeks. Loretta's eyes widened slightly, but her professionalism held. I'm very sorry to hear that. Should I remove Mrs. Harmon from the company holiday party list? Wade almost smiled at the practical question. Yes, that would be appropriate. And Loretta, if my brother calls or comes by, I'm unavailable indefinitely. Understood. She hesitated. And Mr. Rafferty's team? They're scheduled for the quarterly review on Wednesday. Cancel it. Cite scheduling conflicts. We'll work with Anderson Group on Meridian instead. After Loretta left, Wade opened his personal email to find a message from Preston Galloway, Tessa's father. The subject line read simply, "We should talk." Wade considered ignoring it, but Preston had been more than an investor in Cornerstone's early days. He had been a mentor when Wade was struggling to establish himself in Phoenix's competitive construction landscape. The older man had seen something in the determined engineer from Montana, something worth backing when banks had turned him away. He picked up his phone and dialed Preston's number. "Wade." Preston's voice was grave. "I assume you know why I'm calling." "Tessa told you her version of events," Wade replied, keeping his tone neutral. "She says you've locked her out of the house and frozen all the accounts. She says you're punishing her for one indiscreet comment at a girls' night." Wade closed his eyes briefly. "Did she mention that this indiscreet comment involved her plans to divorce me and start a new life with Mike Rafferty in Sedona? Or that my brother was present, apparently supporting this arrangement?" There was a long silence before Preston spoke again. "No, she left those details out. I thought she might have." Wade's grip on the phone tightened. "Preston, I respect you enormously. You took a chance on me when no one else would. But I need you to understand that I have evidence of a long-term affair, unexplained withdrawals from our joint accounts totaling over $50,000 in the past 6 months, and a coordinated plan to blindside me with divorce proceedings once certain business arrangements were in place." Another silence, longer this time. "I always worried she had too much of her mother in her," Preston finally said. "Vanessa never could see the value of what was right in front of her either." "I'm not trying to turn you against your daughter," Wade said, "but I won't be played for a fool." "What do you need from me, Wade?" "Nothing. Cornerstone is stable, and your investment is secure. I just need you to understand that what's happening isn't a tantrum or an overreaction. It's self-preservation." After ending the call, Wade turned his attention to a new email that had just arrived. It was from Reed Blackwell, containing a detailed surveillance report on Mike Rafferty's movements over the past week, along with financial records that Reed's contact had obtained through not entirely legal channels. The picture it painted was illuminating. Rafferty had been systematically positioning himself to capitalize on inside information about Cornerstone's projects. His development company had quietly acquired land adjacent to 3 major Cornerstone construction sites, and he had recently taken meetings with 2 of Wade's largest competitors. Even more concerning were the regular transfers from an offshore account to a new LLC registered in Tessa's maiden name. The amounts corresponded exactly to the withdrawals from their joint account, suggesting Tessa was matching Rafferty's contributions to fund whatever venture they were planning. Wade downloaded the documents to an encrypted folder and forwarded certain key pieces to Dominic Vega. Then he opened a secure messaging app and contacted Reed. "Need to meet. Tonight. The usual place." The reply came immediately. 8 p.m. "I'll bring the files on Cody too." Wade set down his phone and stared out at the Phoenix skyline. Buildings, unlike people, were honest in their construction. Their flaws couldn't be hidden behind smiles and reassurances. They revealed themselves under pressure in moments of structural testing. What he had discovered about his marriage, his brother, and his business relationships was merely the surface evidence of deeper structural failures. He would need to demolish it all and start again. But first, he needed a complete understanding of what he was dealing with. Only then could he begin to design his response, one that would ensure those who had betrayed him would never forget the cost of their decisions. Chapter 4. Drawing Board. The Rusty Nail was the kind of bar that had existed in downtown Phoenix since before the city's Renaissance, stubbornly resisting the wave of artisanal cocktail lounges and farm-to-table restaurants that now surrounded it. It was dim, anonymous, and perfect for conversations that needed to remain private. Wade sat in a back booth, nursing a club soda while waiting for Reed. The last time they'd met here had been 5 years ago, when they discovered that one of their project managers was selling proprietary designs to a competitor. The man had been fired, sued, and ultimately barred from the industry. Wade had been merciful then, accepting a settlement rather than pressing for criminal charges. He wasn't feeling merciful now. Reed arrived precisely at 8 p.m., sliding into the booth with a manila envelope that he kept beneath his palm. At 50, Reed was a decade older than Wade, with the weathered face of a man who had seen combat in his military days and plenty of ugliness in his civilian career as well. "You look like hell," Reed observed. "Been a rough few days," Wade admitted. "What did you find on Cody?" Reed opened the envelope and slid several photos across the table. "Your brother's been in deep with Rafferty for at least 9 months. They first connected through some gambling debts Cody couldn't cover. Rafferty paid them off in exchange for information about Cornerstone's upcoming projects." Wade examined the photos. Cody and Rafferty at a casino in Scottsdale, at a private airfield, entering the Westward Ho Hotel. "The connection to Tessa started about 7 months ago," Reed continued. "At first, it seems Rafferty was just using her to get closer to you. But then it evolved into something more, mutually beneficial. The last photo showed all three of them, Tessa, Mike, and Cody, reviewing documents in what appeared to be a hotel suite. Tessa was pointing to something on a blueprint, her expression animated in a way Wade hadn't seen in years. "What are they looking at?" "Property maps for land surrounding your Sedona project. Rafferty's been buying it up through shell companies. Based on what my source at the county records office says, they've acquired about 80% of the adjacent parcels." Wade's jaw tightened. The Sedona project was Cornerstone's most ambitious undertaking yet. A sustainable luxury resort that would set new standards for environmentally conscious construction in Arizona. He had spent 3 years securing the permits, navigating the strict zoning requirements, and designing buildings that would complement rather than intrude upon the Red Rock landscape. "They're planning to hijack the project," Wade said quietly. "Use my work to enhance the value of their properties, then either force me to buy them out at inflated prices or block my access routes." Reed nodded. "That's my read. But there's more." He pulled out a flash drive. "Rafferty's company is on shaky financial ground. He's leveraged to the hilt on these land purchases. If the Sedona project stalls or gets canceled, he's done." Wade pocketed the drive. "And Cody? What's his stake in this?" 10% of the new development company they've formed, plus whatever Rafferty's paying him for Cornerstone information. Reed hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Your brother's gambling problem is worse than I initially thought. He owes money to some people you don't want to be associated with. The kind who don't use lawyers to collect debts." Wade absorbed this information with the same outward calm he'd maintained throughout the ordeal, but internally, pieces were falling into place. Cody's recent requests for loans, his increased interest in Wade's business dealings, the unexplained bruise Wade had noticed on his brother's face last month. "What about Preston?" Wade asked. "Is he involved?" Reed shook his head. "No evidence of that. From what I can tell, Tessa's been keeping her father in the dark. She knows he respects you." Wade nodded, a small relief in the cascade of betrayals. He pushed the photos back toward Reed. "I need copies of everything digitally secured, and I need you to continue monitoring them, especially any meetings with my competitors or financial institutions." "Already on it. What's your play here, Wade?" Wade stared into his glass for a long moment. "They want to use my work, my reputation, and my relationships to enrich themselves at my expense. They're counting on me following the expected script: get angry, get sloppy, make mistakes they can exploit in court and in business. And instead, I'm going to give them exactly what they want: access to Cornerstone, to the Sedona project, to everything they think they're clever enough to steal." Wade's eyes hardened. "And when they're fully committed, when they've invested everything and burned all other bridges, I'll show them what it really costs to betray me." Reed studied his friend's face. "This isn't just business for you anymore." "No," Wade agreed. "It's education. They need to learn that actions have consequences. Permanent ones." As they left the bar, Wade outlined the first phase of his plan. Reed would continue gathering intelligence, while Wade would appear to be a man distracted by marital problems, making small but noticeable errors in judgment that Rafferty and Cody could exploit. "What about Tessa?" Reed asked as they reached the parking lot. "She's been calling my wife, crying about how you've changed the locks and won't talk to her." "Let her cry," Wade said coldly. "By next week, I'll have moved out of the house completely. She can have it, temporarily. Make sure your wife knows not to share any information about me or my whereabouts." "She's loyal to you," Reed assured him. "Always has been." As Wade drove home through the quiet streets of Paradise Valley, he reflected on loyalty, how rare it was, how valuable, and how completely he had misplaced his trust in the people closest to him. Except for Reed, and possibly Preston, though that relationship would be tested by what was to come. The house was dark when he arrived, but he could see evidence of Tessa's visit earlier in the day, a coffee cup in the sink, mail scattered on the counter. She still had her key, of course. He would need to use that. Wade went to his office and powered up his secure laptop. He accessed the home security system and reviewed the footage from when Tessa had been there. As he suspected, she had gone straight to his office, trying unsuccessfully to access his computer. She had then made a phone call, speaking in hushed tones. Wade turned up the volume. "He's got everything locked down," Tessa was saying. "I can't get into his files. No, I don't think he suspects the full plan yet. Yes, I'm still meeting with the attorney tomorrow. Don't worry, he'll be reasonable once the initial shock wears off. Wade hates conflict. Yes, I'll call Cody and tell him to keep his distance for now." Wade smiled without humor. How little they knew him, despite all their years together. Wade didn't hate conflict. He simply preferred to engage on his own terms, with careful preparation. And those terms were now being set. He switched off the footage and opened a new document, beginning to draft what appeared to be hastily written notes about the Sedona project, notes that contained deliberate errors in the sustainability metrics and access route planning. Tomorrow, he would accidentally leave these notes visible on his desk when he knew Tessa would be visiting the house again. Step by step, he would construct a false narrative for them to follow, a path that appeared to lead to their triumph, but would ultimately reveal itself as their undoing. Like any good structural engineer, Wade understood that the most devastating collapses came not from obvious flaws, but from subtle weaknesses that remained hidden until the critical moment of failure. Chapter 5. Foundation Work. 2 weeks passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of apparent vulnerability and strategic errors. Wade moved into a minimalist apartment in downtown Phoenix, leaving the Paradise Valley house to Tessa. On the surface, he appeared to be a man struggling to cope with the implosion of his marriage, canceling meetings, arriving late to job sites, making small but noticeable errors in project specifications. In reality, every misstep was calculated. Each forgotten document, each careless conversation overheard by Cody's contacts within Cornerstone was designed to feed a specific narrative to his betrayers. On this particular morning, Wade sat across from Dominic Vega in the attorney's sleek downtown office, reviewing the latest developments in what was becoming a contentious divorce proceeding. Tessa's counsel is pushing hard for temporary spousal support at $30,000 monthly, Vega reported, sliding a document across the desk. "They're claiming she sacrificed her career for your success and deserved to maintain her current lifestyle during proceedings." Wade scanned the petition, noting Tessa's convenient omission of the fact that her sacrificed art career had been generously funded by him for years, with a fully equipped studio, gallery connections, and marketing support that had yielded minimal results. "What's your recommendation?" he asked. "Offer $15,000 with strict conditions about property usage and bill payments. It's generous enough to make you look reasonable to the court, but restrictive enough to frustrate her." Wade nodded. "Do it. What about the request for access to Cornerstone's financial records?" "I've filed our objection, but they're arguing that her support claim requires understanding the full extent of your income and assets." Vega leaned forward. "Which brings me to my concern. These errors you've been making at work. Several have been documented in emails that her legal team has subpoenaed. It looks like you're either distracted to the point of incompetence or deliberately trying to devalue the company before asset division." Wade allowed a small smile. "The latter would be illegal." "Yes, it would," Vega agreed, studying his client carefully. "Just as using confidential business information for personal gain would be illegal for Tessa, Mike Rafferty, and your brother." Hypothetically speaking, Wade said, if someone were creating a paper trail of apparent mistakes while simultaneously documenting others' efforts to exploit those mistakes for financial benefit, would that paper trail be admissible in both divorce proceedings and potential criminal complaints? Vega sat back, understanding dawning in his eyes. Hypothetically, yes. Especially if those exploitative efforts involve conspiracy to commit fraud or tortious interference with business relationships. Interesting, Wade said mildly. Now, about the counteroffer for temporary support. After finalizing the legal strategy with Vega, Wade headed to Cornerstone's main office for the first time in several days. His absence had been strategic, allowing certain information to circulate without his oversight. As he entered the building, he noted the subtle shift in how employees regarded him. The mix of sympathy and uncertainty in their expressions, telling him that rumors were spreading as expected. Loretta met him at the elevator with a stack of messages and a concerned look. "The Sedona Project team has been trying to reach you all morning," she said as they walked to his office. "There's some confusion about the environmental impact revisions." "I'll handle it," Wade assured her. "Any other urgent matters?" Mr. Rafferty called twice, asking about the quarterly review we canceled. "He was quite insistent that you two need to meet." "I bet he was," Wade murmured. "Tell him I can see him tomorrow afternoon. Make it the last appointment of the day, when I'm likely to be tired and distracted." Loretta raised an eyebrow, but made the note without comment. In his office, Wade found exactly what he expected: evidence of someone having access to his desktop computer. The security system he'd secretly installed on all his devices had captured images of Cody using the password Wade had deliberately left visible on a post-it beneath his keyboard. Wade sent the security logs to Reed with a brief message. Fish took the bait. Monitor what files were copied. For the next several hours, Wade conducted business as usual, taking meetings and reviewing projects with apparent distraction. In reality, he was meticulously implementing the next phase of his plan. He approved a series of material substitutions for the Sedona project that appeared more cost-effective but would require significant redesign work later in the process. Work that would fall to whoever was heading the project at that stage. At 5 o'clock, as most employees were leaving, Wade received a call from an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Mr. Harmon? This is Detective Mercer with Phoenix PD, Financial Crimes Division. I was hoping we could meet to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding Cornerstone Engineering." Wade's pulse quickened slightly. "What kind of concerns, Detective?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Would tomorrow morning work for you?" "I have a full schedule tomorrow," Wade replied, thinking quickly. "But I could meet you tonight, if that works for you." There was a brief pause. "Tonight will be fine. Say, 8 p.m. at the station." After arranging the meeting, Wade immediately called Reed. "Someone's made a move with the police. Financial Crimes Division, Detective Mercer." "I know Mercer," Reed said. "Straight shooter, but not immune to pressure from the right sources. Want me to do some digging?" "Please. I'm meeting him at 8 p.m. I need to know who filed the complaint and what exactly they're alleging." While waiting for Reed's information, Wade drove to a small diner near the police station, one he knew was popular with law enforcement. He took a booth with a clear view of the entrance and ordered coffee. Just as his cup was being refilled, his phone vibrated with a text from Reed. "Complaint filed by Rafferty yesterday, alleging you're deliberately sabotaging Cornerstone to reduce value before divorce. Claims to have insider information from concerned employee. Guess who? Mercer's legitimate, but preliminary investigation only." Wade absorbed this information calmly. So they were accelerating their timeline, trying to get him removed from Cornerstone's leadership before the Sedona project reached its critical phase. It was an aggressive move, but one he had anticipated might come. At precisely 8 p.m., Wade walked into the police station and asked for Detective Mercer. He was shown to a small interview room where a trim, gray-haired man in his 50s waited with a folder of documents. "Mr. Harmon, thank you for coming in so promptly," Mercer began, gesturing for Wade to sit. "I understand you're going through a difficult personal situation at the moment." "My marriage is ending," Wade acknowledged. "But my business is solid, Detective, which is why I'm concerned about whatever allegations have prompted this meeting." Mercer nodded, opening the folder. "We've received information suggesting that you may be deliberately introducing errors into Cornerstone projects, particularly the Sedona development, to devalue the company before asset division in your divorce. That will be financially self-destructive," Wade pointed out. "Cornerstone is my life's work. People sometimes make irrational decisions during emotional crises, Mercer replied. The complaint includes specific examples of recent errors in material specifications and environmental compliance documents. Wade leaned forward. Detective, may I ask who filed this complaint? You know I can't reveal that. You don't have to, Wade said. It's Michael Rafferty, isn't it? Working with information provided by my brother, Cody Harmon. Mercer's slight change in expression confirmed Wade's statement. What makes you say that? Instead of answering directly, Wade removed a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the table. This contains documentation of a systematic effort by Michael Rafferty, my wife Tessa Harmon, and my brother Cody to exploit temporary disruptions in Cornerstone's operations during my divorce. You'll find evidence of unauthorized access to confidential business files, attempts to manipulate land values around our Sedona project, and financial transactions designed to capitalize on inside information. Mercer looked skeptical but took the drive. And the errors in your recent work are part of a counterintelligence operation to identify exactly how information was being leaked from Cornerstone, Wade explained. The errors are deliberate misinformation, documented as such in my secured private records, which are also on that drive. No actual project has been compromised. For the next hour, Wade walked Detective Mercer through the evidence he had compiled, careful to present himself as a businessman protecting his company rather than a husband seeking revenge. By the time they finished, Mercer's skepticism had shifted to cautious interest. This is complex, the detective admitted. I'll need to review everything carefully before determining next steps. Understand, Wade said. I'm not asking you to make arrests tonight. I just want on record that I'm aware of what's happening and am taking appropriate measures to protect my business interests. As Wade left the police station, he knew he had just changed the dynamic of the game. Rafferty, Tessa, and Cody had tried to use legal channels against him. Now those same channels might become their biggest vulnerability. But he wasn't relying solely on law enforcement. The legal system was just one piece of the intricate mechanism he was constructing, a mechanism designed not just to protect himself, but to ensure that everyone who had betrayed him would face the full consequences of their actions. Back in his downtown apartment, Wade poured himself a rare second scotch and opened his laptop. He accessed a secure server where he had been mapping out every connection, every vulnerability, and every pressure point in the network of relationships surrounding his betrayers. There was Rafferty's financial overextension, Cody's gambling debts to dangerous creditors, Tessa's desperate desire for legitimacy in the art world. Each represented a lever he could pull, a stress point he could exploit. And he was just getting started. Wade's phone buzzed with a message from Preston Galloway. Tessa came to me for money today. Said you cut her off completely. Is this true? Wade considered his response carefully. Preston remained a valuable connection, one he didn't want to alienate unnecessarily. She has access to $15,000 monthly for expenses, approved by both our attorneys. The house and her car are fully paid for. What she doesn't have is unlimited access to funds for her side ventures with Rafferty. Preston's reply came quickly. She didn't mention that first part. Claimed you were trying to financially abuse her. I didn't give her anything. Trust is earned in our family. Wade smiled grimly. I appreciate your discretion. Things will become clearer soon. Setting down his phone, Wade returned to his planning. The pieces were moving into place. Tomorrow's meeting with Rafferty would accelerate the process, setting in motion the final phase of his response to their betrayal. In the structural failure of buildings, there is often a point of no return, a moment when the accumulated stresses became irreversible, when collapse was no longer preventable but simply awaited the final triggering event. Wade was methodically guiding his betrayers toward that point, one calculated step at a time. Chapter 6, Pressure Test. The meeting with Mike Rafferty was set for 5:30 p.m. in Wade's office. Wade deliberately arrived 15 minutes late, his appearance slightly disheveled, a coffee stain visible on his otherwise immaculate shirt cuff. The image of a man unraveling was essential to the next phase of his plan. Rafferty waited in the reception area, scrolling through his phone with practiced nonchalance. At 45, He cultivated the look of a younger man, designer suits, carefully maintained physique, the kind of artificial tan that never faded regardless of season. He stood as Wade approached, extending his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Wade, thanks for making time. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." Wade accepted the handshake, noting the excessive pressure Rafferty applied. A small man's power play. "Mike, sorry about the delays. It's been a challenging period." He led Rafferty to his office, deliberately leaving the door ajar. Let him think Wade was careless, unaware of the need for privacy. "I heard about you and Tessa," Rafferty said as they sat down, his tone conveying rehearsed sympathy. "Tough break. Marriage is a minefield, isn't it? Sometimes the explosives are right where you least expect them," Wade agreed, watching Rafferty's face carefully. "But we're not here to discuss my personal life. You wanted to talk about the quarterly review." Rafferty launched into a prepared speech about the successful collaborations between his development company and Cornerstone, the potential for future projects, and his particular interest in the Sedona development. Wade allowed his attention to appear to drift periodically, shuffling papers and checking his phone, all while observing Rafferty's growing confidence. "The thing is," Rafferty eventually said, leaning forward conspirationally, "I've heard there might be some regulatory hurdles with the Sedona project. Environmental compliance issues that could cause delays." "Where did you hear that?" Wade asked, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. Rafferty shrugged. "People talk. Construction communities small. But I might have a solution. My company has acquired some adjacent properties that could serve as alternative access points. Might help expedite approvals if you're running into problems with the current plan." "That's quite a coincidence," Wade remarked. "You just happen to buy land that might solve problems you just happen to hear about." "Call it forward thinking," Rafferty smirked. "I've always believed in being prepared for opportunities." Wade allowed a long silence, letting Rafferty grow uncomfortable. Finally, he sighed heavily. "Look, Mike, I'm going to be straight with you. Cornerstone is facing some challenges right now. The divorce is complicated. Tessa's demands are substantial. I can imagine," Rafferty murmured, poorly concealing his interest. "The Sedona project is particularly vulnerable," Wade continued, lowering his voice as if sharing a confidence. "You're right about the environmental issues. There are some serious flaws in the sustainability metrics that weren't caught in the initial review. If they come to light during construction." He let the implication hang in the air. Rafferty leaned closer, barely able to contain his excitement. "That would be unfortunate. Delays, penalties, possibly even project cancellation." "Worst-case scenario, yes," Wade agreed, "which is why I might be interested in discussing those adjacent properties." As a contingency plan, for the next half hour, they engaged in a careful dance. Rafferty probing for specifics about the project's vulnerabilities, Wade revealing just enough to seem desperate, but not enough to show his hand. By the time Rafferty left, arrangements had been made for a more detailed discussion the following week, including a site visit to Sedona. As soon as Rafferty's car pulled away from Cornerstone's parking lot, Wade closed his office door and accessed the recording system he'd activated before the meeting. He isolated the key segments where Rafferty had essentially admitted to using insider information for personal gain, then encrypted the file and sent it to both Dominic Vega and Detective Mercer. His phone rang almost immediately. It was Reed. "Rafferty just called Cody," Reed reported. "They're meeting tonight at the Capitol Grill. Want me to monitor?" "Yes, and see if you can get audio. I need to know exactly how they interpret what just happened." After ending the call, Wade sat back in his chair, reviewing the day's developments. The trap was nearly set. Rafferty believed he had found Wade's weakness and was moving to exploit it. Cody and Tessa would soon be brought fully into what they thought was their moment of triumph. But before that could happen, Wade needed to accelerate certain other elements of his plan. He placed a call to Preston Galloway. "Preston, I need a favor," he said when the older man answered. "It's about Tessa's art career." "What about it?" Preston asked cautiously. "I've been thinking about our conversation regarding her gallery aspirations. I know it's important to her, and despite everything, I'd like to see her succeed in that area." There was a pause before Preston responded. That's unexpectedly generous, given the circumstances. Maybe I'm trying to be the bigger person, Wade suggested. Or maybe I just want a clean break with no lingering resentments. Either way, I've arranged for Gabriel Ortiz to meet with her about a possible exhibition. Preston's intake of breath was audible. Gabriel Ortiz was one of the most influential gallery owners in the Southwest, known for launching significant careers in contemporary art. Wait, Ortiz doesn't meet with unknown artists. How did you arrange this? Cornerstone designed his new gallery in Scottsdale. He owed me a favor. What Wade didn't mention was that the meeting would be on his terms, with very specific parameters. I don't know what to say, Preston admitted. Tessa's been desperate for this kind of opportunity for years. Just make sure she knows about the meeting. Tuesday, 2 p.m. at his gallery. Tell her it's important she goes alone. Ortiz dislikes entourages or managers at initial meetings. After ending the call, Wade made another to Gabriel Ortiz, confirming the arrangement they had discussed earlier that week. Ortiz, who genuinely did owe Wade for expediting permits on his gallery renovation, had agreed to the unusual request with minimal questions. Remember, Wade instructed, evaluate her work honestly. If it has merit, treat it as you would any other artist's. If not, be direct but professional. This isn't about punishing her artistically. In the other matter, Ortiz asked, proceed as discussed. Record everything. With that piece in motion, Wade turned to his computer and accessed Cornerstone's project management system. He made several significant changes to the Sedona project parameters. Changes that appear to be attempts to correct the errors he had mentioned to Rafferty, but actually created a deeper layer of problems that would only become apparent when construction began. These modifications were documented in a secure, timestamp file that clearly identified them as part of a counterintelligence operation. Simultaneously, he pushed through approvals for materials and contracts that would commit Cornerstone to the project timeline, while building in exit clauses that only he was aware of. By midnight, Wade had constructed an elaborate facade, a project that appeared viable but contained carefully hidden structural weaknesses, much like the relationship that was now collapsing around him. Anyone examining the Sedona development with standard due diligence would see a promising investment opportunity. Only someone with Wade's specific knowledge would recognize the fatal flaws embedded within its design. As he finally prepared to leave the office, Wade received a text from Reed. Audio secured from Capitol Grill. Rafferty believes you're desperate, looking for bailout options. Planning to offer partnership deal for Sedona as Lifeline, 60/40th split in their favor. Cody suggested accelerating timeline. Meeting with Tessa tomorrow to finalize approach. Wade smiled grimly. They were moving faster than anticipated, driven by greed and the scent of vulnerability. It was time to remove any remaining obstacles to their self-destruction. He composed a brief email to his executive team, announcing a 2-week leave of absence to address personal matters. Loretta would handle day-to-day operations, with specific instructions to facilitate any requests related to the Sedona project and to direct all inquiries from Rafferty's team to the project managers who were unknowingly part of Wade's counterintelligence operation. As Wade drove back to his apartment, he reflected on how quickly 15 years of marriage and a lifetime of brotherly trust had disintegrated. The pain remained, buried beneath layers of strategic calculation, but he refused to acknowledge it. Emotion was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. Later, when everything was finished, he would allow himself to process the full weight of the betrayal. For now, he needed to maintain absolute focus. The next 2 weeks would determine not just the future of Cornerstone Engineering, but the fate of everyone who had conspired against him. Wade had designed his response with the same precision he applied to his buildings, identifying load-bearing points, calculating stresses, and ensuring that when collapse came, it would be complete and irreversible. Chapter 7: Demolition. The gallery was bathed in the pristine light typical of high-end art spaces, shadowless, revealing, merciless in its clarity. Tessa Harmon stood in the center of the main exhibition room, surrounded by her paintings arranged carefully on stark white walls. Gabriel Ortiz circled slowly, studying each piece with the measured consideration of a man who had built his reputation on discovering authentic talent. Wade watched through the security feed Ortiz had granted him access to, observing his wife's nervous anticipation from the privacy of his downtown apartment. She looked different today, hair styled conservatively, wearing a simple black dress that projected artistic seriousness. This was Tessa, the aspiring professional, not Tessa, the socialite wife, or Tessa, the scheming betrayer. "Your technique is competent," Ortiz finally said, stopping before a large abstract canvas dominated by swirls of crimson and gold. "You have good instinct for color relationships." Tessa's face brightened. "Thank you. I've been working on this series for nearly 3 years. However," Ortiz continued, his tone measured, "I don't see a distinctive vision here. These pieces reflect influences, Rothko, Mitchell, some Diebenkorn, but they don't speak with your own voice." The hope in Tessa's expression faltered. "I'm still developing my personal style. Many artists start by—" "You're not a beginner," Ortiz interrupted gently. "According to your CV, you've been painting seriously for over a decade. By now, there should be something uniquely yours emerging." Wade watched as Tessa struggled to maintain her composure, caught between defensiveness and desperation for approval. This was the conversation she had both craved and feared throughout their marriage. Honest professional assessment rather than the polite encouragement of friends or the purchased praise of paid consultants. "Mr. Ortiz," she finally said, straightening her shoulders, "I appreciate your frankness. What would it take for you to consider representing me? I'm willing to develop in whatever direction you think would be marketable." Ortiz raised an eyebrow. "Art isn't about marketability, Mrs. Harmon. It's about necessity. The artist's necessity to express something only they can express. I don't sense that urgency in your work." "Please," Tessa said, her voice dropping. "This opportunity means everything to me. My husband, my ex-husband, he's trying to destroy everything I've worked for. This gallery would be my independence." Ortiz studied her for a long moment. "Interesting. When we scheduled this meeting, I was told you believe your husband was supporting your artistic aspirations." Tessa hesitated, clearly recalibrating her approach. "It's complicated. Wade did support me, financially, but emotionally, he never really believed in my talent. This divorce is my chance to prove myself. By leveraging his connections to advance your career?" Ortiz asked mildly. The color rose in Tessa's cheeks. "That's not fair. I've earned this opportunity." "Have you?" Ortiz gestured to the paintings. "These works show technical skill but lack emotional resonance or conceptual depth. They're decorative, Mrs. Harmon. Pleasant but forgettable." The brutal assessment hung in the air between them. Wade could see Tessa processing the implications, not just for this particular opportunity, but for the narrative she had constructed about her sacrificed artistic career. "Let me be direct," Ortiz continued. "I agreed to this meeting as a professional courtesy to Wade Harmon, whose firm has done exceptional work for my galleries. I reviewed your portfolio in advance and found it commercially adequate but artistically derivative. I took this meeting to confirm that impression in person." "Wade arranged this?" Tessa asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "Why would he do that when we're in the middle of a divorce?" Ortiz shrugged. "Perhaps he genuinely wants you to succeed independently. Or perhaps he wanted you to hear the truth from someone whose opinion you couldn't dismiss." Wade watched Tessa's expression shift from confusion to humiliation to anger. This was the first piece of his carefully orchestrated week. Removing the fantasy that had justified much of her behavior, the belief that her art career had been the sacrificial lamb of their marriage rather than simply an expensive hobby he had indulged. But the gallery meeting was just the opening salvo. As Tessa gathered her portfolio and made a dignified but hasty exit from Ortiz's gallery, Wade switched to another feed on his laptop, this one showing the Paradise Valley house. A moving truck was parked in the driveway, and workers were systematically removing selected items. Family heirlooms from Wade's side, specific furniture pieces he had brought to the marriage, and various personal items that held sentimental rather than monetary value. all legally, his under Arizona's separate property laws, all itemized in documentation his attorney had filed with the court that morning. Wade's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Tessa. He declined it, watching as she exited the gallery and stopped on the sidewalk, staring at her phone in frustration. A moment later, a text appeared. "What the hell are you doing? First, that humiliating gallery meeting, and now movers at the house? Answer me." Wade set the phone aside without responding and opened his email. A message from Dominic Vega contained confirmation that the emergency court hearing Tessa's attorney had requested to block the removal of property had been denied, with the judge citing clear documentation of separate property ownership. Another email, this one from Detective Mercer, indicated that the preliminary investigation into financial improprieties at Cornerstone had shifted focus based on new evidence. While not explicitly stated, the implication was clear: Rafferty and Cody were now the primary subjects of inquiry. The final piece came from Reed. Surveillance photos of Cody meeting with a man identified as Victor Solano, a known associate of one of Phoenix's more dangerous loan sharks. The meeting had not gone well, based on Cody's body language and the visible bruise forming on his jaw as he left. All the pressure points were being activated simultaneously. Tessa's artistic aspirations deflated, her comfortable home life disrupted. Rafferty's business schemes under legal scrutiny. Cody's dangerous debts coming due with no brother to bail him out. Each was feeling the first tremors of the collapse Wade had engineered. His phone rang again, Preston Galloway this time. Wade answered. "Tessa just called me. Hysterical," Preston said without preamble. "Says you're deliberately humiliating her and stealing from the house." "The gallery meeting was honest professional assessment," Wade replied calmly. "And I'm only removing items that are legally mine. Family pieces, things I owned before the marriage. Everything is documented." Preston sighed heavily. "I believe you. But Wade, she's still my daughter, despite her flaws. How far are you planning to take this?" It was a fair question, one that Wade had considered carefully. "I'm not doing anything illegal or even unethical, Preston. I'm simply ensuring that actions have consequences. Tessa, Mike, and Cody conspired to use me, to take what I've built. They need to understand what that really costs. And what about afterwards? What happens when you've made your point?" Wade stared out his apartment window at the Phoenix skyline. "I rebuild. Without them." After ending the call, Wade returned to monitoring the various feeds. By late afternoon, everything was proceeding as planned. The movers had finished at the house. Tessa had returned home to find her key no longer worked. Another legal maneuver Vega had executed, citing security concerns about unauthorized visitors given the valuable separate property remaining inside. Wade's personal phone had accumulated 37 missed calls and messages from Tessa, Cody, and even Mike Rafferty. His professional email contained an urgent request from Rafferty for tomorrow's site visit to Sedona to be moved up to today. Desperation was setting in exactly as he had anticipated. At precisely 7 p.m., Wade finally responded to Rafferty with a brief email. "Can't do today. Meet tomorrow at Cornerstone, 8 a.m. We'll drive to site together, bringing contracts for preliminary discussion." The response came within minutes. "See you at 8. Looking forward to working together on this." Wade smiled thinly. Rafferty believed he was closing in on victory, that Wade was capitulating under personal and professional pressure. The reality would become clear soon enough. As night fell, Wade drove to a secure storage facility where he had been keeping copies of all evidence and documentation related to his counterintelligence operation. He added today's recordings and updated the timeline of events, ensuring that everything was properly organized for what would come next. On his way back to the apartment, he passed the Paradise Valley house and saw Tessa's car in the driveway, along with another he recognized as belonging to Naomi, her sister. Through the windows, he could see them in animated conversation, Tessa gesturing frantically while Naomi appeared to be trying to calm her. For a brief moment, Wade felt a flicker of the connection they had once shared. 15 years of shared history, dreams, and intimacy. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by the cold certainty that the woman he had married existed only in his memory. The real Tessa had revealed herself on that live stream. planning her escape while mocking what they had built together. Back at his apartment, Wade made final preparations for tomorrow's meeting. He reviewed the modified Sedona project plans one last time, ensuring that the false vulnerabilities were convincing while the true exit strategy remained concealed. He confirmed the arrangements with key Cornerstone executives who had been brought into his confidence, selected for their loyalty and discretion. Everything was in place. Tomorrow would be the point of no return, the moment when all the stresses and weaknesses Wade had been carefully introducing would reach critical mass. The resulting collapse would be spectacular, irreversible, and entirely of their own making. As he finally prepared for sleep, Wade's phone chimed with one last message from Tessa. "Whatever you think you're doing, it won't work. You're not as clever as you think, Wade. You never were." He read it twice, noting the desperate bravado behind the words. Then he turned off the phone without replying and closed his eyes, sleeping soundly for the first time since the night of the live stream. Chapter 8. Implosion. The morning dawned clear and hot, typical for Phoenix in late summer. Wade arrived at Cornerstone's offices at 7:30 a.m., allowing himself time to ensure everything was in place before Rafferty's arrival. Loretta met him with coffee and a concerned expression. "Are you sure about today?" she asked quietly. "Once this starts, it can't be stopped," Wade finished for her. "Yes, I'm sure. Everyone knows their role." Loretta nodded. "The project team is prepared. Legal is standing by, and Mr. Vega will be here at 9:30 as requested." "Perfect." Wade took the coffee and headed to his office. When Rafferty arrives, show him in immediately. At precisely 8 a.m., Mike Rafferty walked through Cornerstone's glass doors, dressed in what Wade recognized as his power negotiation outfit: custom navy suit, subtle red tie, Italian shoes. The confidence in his stride suggested a man who believed he held all the cards. "Wade," Rafferty greeted him with false warmth. "Appreciate you making time for this. I think today's going to be productive for both of us." "I certainly hope so," Wade replied, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Before we head to Sedona, I wanted to discuss terms." Rafferty settled into the chair, briefcase balanced on his knees. "I'm all ears. I brought some preliminary proposals for the partnership structure we discussed." "Partnership," Wade repeated, as if considering the word for the first time. "That's an interesting choice of terminology, given the circumstances." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Rafferty's face. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering directly, Wade pressed a button on his desk phone. "Loretta, could you ask the Sedona team to join us now?" Within moments, the office door opened to admit 4 people. Cornerstone's chief financial officer, the lead architect for the Sedona project, the company's environmental compliance officer, and a woman Rafferty didn't recognize. Wade introduced them each by name, ending with, "And this is Special Agent Claudia Torres, FBI Financial Crimes Division." The color drained from Rafferty's face. "FBI? What is this, Wade?" "This," Wade said calmly, "is the consequence of attempting to manipulate confidential business information for personal gain, conspiracy to commit fraud, and tortious interference with business relationships." He nodded to Agent Torres, who placed a recording device on the desk. "Mr. Rafferty, we have documented evidence of your collaboration with Cody Harmon and Tessa Harmon to exploit insider information about Cornerstone Engineering's projects, particularly the Sedona development." "That's ridiculous," Rafferty protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I've done nothing illegal." Wade opened a folder and pushed several documents across the desk. "These are transcripts of your conversations with my brother over the past 6 months, discussing how to use information he provided to acquire adjacent properties to the Sedona project. This 1-inch," he tapped a particular page, "details your meeting with Tessa 3 months ago, where you outlined how to access Cornerstone's confidential files through my home computer." Rafferty's eyes darted between the documents and the faces watching him. "This is a setup. You can't prove any of this." "Actually," Agent Torres interjected, "we can. Mr. Harmon has been conducting a counterintelligence operation with the knowledge of law enforcement for the past month. The vulnerabilities in the Sedona project that you attempted to exploit were deliberate misinformation, documented as such in secured records." "And this," Wade added, sliding across another document, is a detailed financial analysis of your company's precarious position. The loans you secured to purchase those adjacent properties were based on fraudulent projections using Cornerstone's proprietary data. For several seconds, Rafferty seemed unable to speak. Then, rallying, he straightened in his chair. "This is about Tessa, isn't it? You're using your company and these bogus accusations to punish her for leaving you." Wade's expression remained impassive. "This has nothing to do with my divorce. This is about business ethics and legal compliance. The fact that you were sleeping with my wife while conspiring to undermine my company is certainly distasteful, but it's not why you're facing potential federal charges." "Potential charges?" Rafferty seized on the word. "So nothing's been filed yet." "That depends on what happens next," Agent Torres explained. "The FBI is prepared to pursue this case based on the evidence Mr. Harmon has provided. However, there may be alternatives that could mitigate the consequences." Hope flickered briefly in Rafferty's eyes. "What alternatives?" Wade gestured to the CFO, who placed another document on the desk. "This is an agreement requiring you to divest all properties adjacent to the Sedona project at the original purchase price, cease all contact with Cornerstone employees, including myself, and provide a complete accounting of all confidential information you've accessed. And if I sign this, the FBI may consider focusing their investigation on other parties who were more directly involved in accessing confidential information," Agent Torres said carefully. Rafferty's gaze hardened. "You want to turn on Cody and Tessa." "We want the truth," Wade corrected. "About who initiated the conspiracy, who accessed which documents, and who provided what information." For several long moments, Rafferty stared at the document before him, weighing his options. Finally, he reached for a pen. "I want immunity in writing." "That's beyond my authority to promise," Agent Torres replied. "But your cooperation will be noted in my report." As Rafferty began signing the agreement, Wade observed him with clinical detachment. The man had sought to dismantle everything Wade had built, had violated both personal and professional boundaries without hesitation. Now he was sacrificing his accomplices at the first sign of serious consequences. Once the document was signed, Agent Torres collected it along with her recording device. "Mr. Rafferty, I'll need you to come to our field office to provide a formal statement." "Now?" Rafferty asked weakly. "Now," she confirmed. After they departed, Wade turned to his executive team. "Implement the containment protocol we discussed. Full audit of all projects Rafferty was associated with. Security review for any systems Cody might have accessed, and prepare the press statement about the strategic reorganization of the Sedona project." The team nodded and filed out, leaving Wade alone in his office. He allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction before picking up his phone to call Dominic Vega. "It's done," he said simply. "Rafferty signed the agreement and is with the FBI now. Time for Phase 2. "I'll file the amended divorce petition immediately," Vega replied. "With Rafferty's statement about Tessa's involvement, we have grounds for the fraud claim. How do you want to handle the house?" Wade considered the question. The Paradise Valley house, despite its value and the memories it contained, now felt tainted by betrayal. "Sell it. As part of the settlement, Tessa can have half the proceeds minus the costs of her unauthorized withdrawals." "I've moved on." As Wade ended the call, his personal phone began ringing, Cody's number. After a moment's hesitation, he answered. "Wade, what the hell is happening?" Cody's voice was panicked. "Rafferty just called Tessa, saying the FBI took him in for questioning about Cornerstone. He said you know everything." "I do," Wade confirmed, his voice cool. "Every conversation, every stolen document, every plan you three made." "Listen, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Wade interrupted. "You betrayed me, Cody. Your own brother. For what? 10% of a fraudulent development deal and some gambling debt relief." There was a long silence before Cody spoke again, his voice smaller. "I got in too deep, Wade. These people, they were going to hurt me. Rafferty offered a way out. There were other options. You could have come to me. After helping you bail me out 3 times already, you made it clear last time you were done rescuing me." Wade felt a flicker of the old bond between them, the protective instinct that had driven him to shield his younger brother throughout their childhood. But the feeling faded quickly replaced by cold reality. "Solano's men found you yesterday," he said. "That bruise on your jaw is just the beginning unless you settle your debt." Cody's sharp intake of breath confirmed Wade's information. "How did you know about that?" "I know everything, Cody, including the exact amount you owe, $127,000. Plus whatever Rafferty promised you that will never materialize now." "Wade, please. I'm your brother. You can't let these guys hurt me." Wade closed his eyes briefly, considering his next words carefully. "There's an envelope in your mailbox. Inside is a cashier's check for $127,000 made out to Victor Solano. It will clear the debt completely, with his agreement that they won't contact you again." "Thank you," Cody breathed, relief palpable in his voice. "I swear, Wade, I'll make this up to you." "No, you won't," Wade cut him off. "Because after you pay Solano, you're going to pack whatever you can carry and leave Phoenix. Today, the check comes with conditions, which are detailed in the accompanying letter. The most important one is that you never contact me again." "What? You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," Wade said, each word precise and final. "You're my blood, so I won't let them break your legs or worse. But you're dead to me, Cody. The brother I trusted no longer exists." "Wade." "Goodbye, Cody." Wade ended the call and blocked the number. The severing of their lifelong connection brought a dull ache, but no regret. Family was supposed to be the foundation upon which everything else was built. Cody had undermined that foundation beyond repair. The next call came sooner than expected. Tessa, her voice shrill with panic. "What have you done?" "The FBI just left here with a search warrant. They're following evidence of conspiracy and fraud," Wade replied matter-of-factly. "Your involvement with Rafferty's scheme to exploit Cornerstone's confidential information has consequences, Tessa." "It wasn't my idea," she protested. "Mike approached me after he found out I was unhappy in the marriage. He said he could help me become independent, have my own gallery." "Stop lying," Wade said quietly. "I have recordings of you discussing how to access my computer while I was traveling. I have documentation of you transferring funds from our joint account to the LLC you created with Rafferty. I have a live stream where you called me a paycheck, not a soulmate, and outlined your plans for after the divorce." There was a moment of stunned silence before Tessa's voice returned, now cold with fury. "You planned all of this? The gallery meeting, the house lockout, Rafferty's arrest. It was all some elaborate revenge scheme." "I simply ensured that actions had consequences," Wade corrected. "My attorney will contact yours with amended divorce terms reflecting the new circumstances. Given the evidence of financial fraud, I suggest you accept whatever is offered." "Or what?" Tessa challenged. "Or face criminal charges alongside Rafferty. Agent Torres is particularly interested in the transfers from our joint account." The threat hung in the air between them. Finally, Tessa spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought you could be this cold." "You never really knew me," Wade replied. "Just like I never really knew you." "Goodbye, Tessa." As the call ended, Wade felt not triumph, but a weary resolution. The structures he had believed in, his marriage, his family bonds, his business partnerships, had been compromised beyond repair. All that remained was to complete the demolition and begin again on solid ground. His phone buzzed with a text from Reed. Cody just left his apartment with 2 suitcases, headed to the airport according to the tracker on his car. At least his brother had the sense to follow instructions. Wade sent back a brief acknowledgement before turning to his computer to check the final elements of his plan. The security footage from his home showed FBI agents carefully boxing evidence from Tessa's studio and the guest room she had converted into an office. In his downtown apartment building, similar agents were interviewing his neighbors about his whereabouts during key dates, a formality to confirm his alibi for the counterintelligence operation. Everything was proceeding as designed. By day's end, the Sedona project would be restructured under new leadership. Rafferty's company would be facing insolvency due to the forced property sales. Cody would be on his way to whatever new life he could cobble together, and Tessa would be confronting the reality of divorce terms that left her comfortable but far from wealthy. The demolition was nearly complete. All that remained was to survey the cleared ground and begin planning what would rise in its place. Chapter 9. Rebirth. 6 months later, Wade stood on the red earth of Sedona, watching as construction crews positioned the massive steel beams that would form the skeleton of the main lodge. The project had evolved significantly since its original conception, now incorporating advanced sustainability features and indigenous design elements that had earned praise from environmental groups and local tribal councils alike. The foundation tests came back perfect, said Elena Reyes, the new project director Wade had promoted from within Cornerstone. We're ahead of schedule and under budget. Wade nodded, pleased but not surprised. Elena had proven herself not just technically brilliant, but ethically uncompromising. Exactly the qualities he now valued above all else in his reorganized company. The press event is confirmed for next month, she continued. The governor will attend the groundbreaking ceremony. Good. Make sure Preston Galloway receives a personal invitation. He should see what his investment has helped create. As Elena moved away to consult with the construction foreman, Wade took a moment to appreciate the vista before him. The iconic red rock formations glowing in the afternoon sun, the expansive blue sky, the clean line of the horizon. There is something profoundly satisfying about building in such a landscape, about creating something that would enhance rather than detract from its natural beauty. His phone buzzed with an email notification from Dominic Vega. Final divorce decree signed by judge this morning. All terms accepted. No contest. You are officially a free man. Wade pocketed the phone without replying. The news brought neither joy nor pain, merely the quiet satisfaction of closure. The terms had been fair but firm. Tessa had received enough to maintain a comfortable life, but nothing approaching the wealth she had anticipated from their split. The fraud evidence had remained a Damocles sword throughout negotiations, ensuring her compliance without needing to be wielded publicly. Last he had heard, she had moved to Tucson and opened a small gallery with the settlement money. According to Preston, with whom Wade still maintained a cordial relationship, she was finally developing her own artistic voice, freed from the pressure of proving herself in Phoenix's more competitive scene. Cody had settled in Oregon, working at a regional engineering firm far from the high-stakes projects he had coveted in Arizona. The monthly reports Wade still received confirmed his brother remained sober and focused, though Wade had no intention of ever reestablishing contact. Some betrayals could be understood, but never forgiven. As for Mike Rafferty, his fall had been swift and complete. The forced sale of his Sedona properties had triggered a cascade of financial problems, revealing the extent of his over-leverage. Within 3 months, his development company had filed for bankruptcy, and he now faced federal charges related to securities fraud from previous projects unconnected to Cornerstone. Wade's own life had transformed in unexpected ways. He had sold the Paradise Valley house and moved permanently to the minimalist downtown apartment, finding that he preferred its proximity to Cornerstone's offices and the vibrant energy of Central Phoenix. The company itself had emerged stronger from the crisis, with improved security protocols and a leadership team purged of anyone with questionable loyalty. Mr. Harmon? A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was James Mercado, the cultural consultant hired to ensure the resort honored the region's indigenous heritage. Could I show you the modified entrance design? We've incorporated some symbolic elements that I think you'll appreciate. As Wade followed Mercado to the temporary project office, he reflected on how this rebuilding phase had changed him. The calculating coldness that had driven his response to betrayal had not disappeared, but it had been channeled into something more productive, a clear-eyed assessment of people and situations that helped him avoid further misplaced trust. The modified entrance design was indeed impressive, incorporating subtle petroglyphic elements that referenced the land's ancient history without crossing into appropriation. Wade approved it immediately, earning a grateful smile from Mercado. This project means a lot to the community, Mercado said as they walked back toward the construction site. Most developers who come here just see dollar signs. You seem to see something more. Wade considered this. I believe in building things that last, not just physically, but in their impact. When everything else falls away, relationships, reputations, the day-to-day concerns, what remains is what you've built. I want my legacy to be structures that enhance lives rather than merely containing them. It was perhaps the most personal statement he had made to anyone in months, revealing a philosophical core that had survived intact beneath the calculated vengeance and professional reconstruction. As the day drew to a close, Wade declined Elena's invitation to join the team for dinner in town, preferring to spend the evening alone in his hotel room, reviewing plans for Cornerstone's next major project, an urban renewal development in South Phoenix that would bring affordable housing and community spaces to an underserved neighborhood. His phone rang just as he was settling in with the blueprints. The screen showed Preston Galloway's name. "Preston," Wade greeted him. "I was just thinking about you. The Sedona project is coming along beautifully. I saw the progress photos Elena sent," Preston replied. "It's going to be spectacular. But that's not why I'm calling." Something in the older man's tone alerted Wade. "What's happened?" "Tessa came to see me today. She heard about the divorce being finalized." Preston paused. "She asked me to feel you out about possibly meeting for coffee. For closure," she said. Wade's expression remained impassive, though no one was there to see it. "And what do you think about that request?" "Honestly, I think she's finally grown up enough to recognize what she threw away. But that doesn't mean you owe her anything, including your time. Thank you for understanding that." Wade's voice was quiet but firm. "Please tell Tessa that I wish her well with her gallery and her new life, but there's nothing to discuss between us. I'll let her down gently," Preston promised. "And Wade, for what it's worth, I think you're handling all of this with more grace than most would manage." After ending the call, Wade returned to his blueprints, but found his concentration disrupted by Preston's words. Grace wasn't what had driven his methodical dismantling of those who had betrayed him. Precision, yes. Strategic thinking, certainly. But grace implied forgiveness, and Wade had not forgiven anyone. He had simply excised them from his life with surgical precision, cauterizing the wounds to prevent further damage. The structures he was now building, both literal and figurative, were designed with stronger materials, better safeguards, and clearer boundaries. Never again would he allow his foundation to be compromised by those he trusted. As night fell over Sedona, casting the red rocks in deepening shadows, Wade stepped onto his hotel room balcony and gazed at the stars emerging in the clear desert sky. The universe continued its expansive journey regardless of human dramas. Buildings rose and fell. Relationships formed and dissolved. What mattered was integrity,